The onyx necklace was gone from the vault, and the replica was already hidden in her closet. Yvette Cole was a maid, a black American woman, 29, in a gray dress and white apron, a control ledger tucked under her arm. She logged every stain, every button, every garment she saved. 8 years in the Kang mansion. Nobody ever looked at her twice. Kang Min-jae ran the Korean Mafia. They called him Snow Wolf. A dark dragon tattoo climbed the left side of his neck and vanished under his collar. The suit cost more than her mother's rehab. His watch caught the light when he passed her in the hall. Then the vault opened. The necklace disappeared. Min-jae's fiancé thought the call was silenced. It wasn't. He heard every word. Plant the replica in the maid's closet. Have the housekeeper swear she saw it there. Frame the woman who had nothing. They chose her because she was invisible, because no one would believe her word against theirs. But Min-jae recorded the last seconds of that call, and when the police came for Yvette, he did something no one in that house expected. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and click join to become a member and help our channel. The stain was spreading, and Yvette had 11 seconds to decide. She saw it the moment she stepped into the dressing room off the east wing, a bead of amber solvent crawling down the lapel of the graffiti tuxedo, the one laid out for tonight, the one worth more than 3 months of her pay. Someone had left an open bottle on the shelf above the garment rail. The bottle had tipped. The solvent had found the silk. She did not call for help. Help meant explaining, and explaining meant time, and time was the one thing the silk did not have. Yvette pulled the handkerchief from her apron pocket, not to wipe. Wiping would drive it in. She folded the cloth into a hard pad and pressed it flat beneath the stain, catching the drip from underneath, lifting instead of smearing. Her other hand went to the small kit clipped inside her waistband. Cornstarch. A pinch, then a full spoon, dusted along the wet edge before it could bloom. "Come on," she whispered to the fabric. "Come on." The solvent hit the starch and stopped moving. She counted in her head. 30 seconds for the powder to drink. She used them to read the bottle on the shelf. No label she recognized, a chemist's mark stamped into the glass, a code in Hangul she'd seen only once before, on a crate in the Han family's delivery van. She filed the thought away and let it go. The silk first. She worked the powder off with the flat of a soft brush, then a second pad, then a breath of steam from the little travel iron she kept charged in the linen closet because the house iron lived 3 floors away, and silk did not wait for stairs. She had learned all of it the hard way, in other houses, from other women who cleaned, so that other families could shine. A stain was a race. You either won it in the first minute, or you spent a week losing it slowly. By the time the housekeeping bell rang 2 floors down, the tuxedo hung clean on its hanger, the lapel dry, the ghost of the stain gone as if it had never dared. Yvette stood back and looked at it the way a surgeon looks at a closed incision. 8 months in this house, and no one had ever thanked her for a save like this one. No one would tonight. The man would put the tuxedo on and feel nothing, because the whole point of her work was that it left no trace, and the better she was, the less she existed. She had made peace with that a long time ago, most days. Then she took out her notebook. It was a plain thing, black cover, corners soft from handling, a rubber band holding the spine together. Inside, every garment in the Kang mansion had a page. Date, condition, treatment, signature. She wrote in small, even letters, the way her mother had taught her to write before her mother's hands began to shake. Tuxedo, graphite, Master Kang, solvent contact, left lapel, 4:40 p.m., treated, no residue, source, open bottle, upper shelf, not household issue. She underlined the last 3 words. She did not know yet why. She only knew that in this house, the things that were not household issue were the things that came back to hurt you. A door opened behind her. "You're still here." Yoon So-han filled the doorway in Marfim tweed. A coffee in one hand she had no intention of drinking. Her eyes went past Yvette to the tuxedo, checked it the way you'd check a coat you'd handed to a stranger, and found nothing to punish. "It was clean when I hung it," Yoon So said. "Yes, ma'am." So why are you writing about it? Habit, ma'am. I log everything I touch. Yunso's gaze dropped to the notebook, held there a beat too long, then lifted away as though it bored her. You people and your little books. She set the untouched coffee on the shelf, right where the solvent bottle had been, right where a ring of moisture still darkened the wood. Take that away, and Yvette. She was already turning. Don't let me find you in the private rooms again. The private rooms, as if the dressing room where she'd just saved the man's tuxedo belonged to someone with the right to keep her out of it. Yes, ma'am, Yvette said. Yunso paused at the threshold. She turned the engagement ring on her finger. Once, a habit Yvette had watched her repeat whenever the merger came up, whenever Min-jae's name was in the room and his attention wasn't. You've been here how long now? 8 months, ma'am. And you'll stay how long, do you think? It wasn't curiosity. It was a woman measuring a fixture, deciding whether it would still be there after the renovation. As long as the work lasts. Yes, Yunso said, and something in the word closed like a drawer. That's rather up to us, isn't it? She left. The coffee cooled on the shelf where she'd abandoned it. One more thing for Yvette to carry away. Yvette waited until the heels had faded down the corridor. Then she wrote one more line. Moved my log with her eyes before she moved it with her words. She closed the book. The staff stairs were narrow and unlit past the third landing because no one who mattered ever used them. Yvette took them 2 at a time, apron pocket heavy with the notebook, and reached the laundry corridor as the 6 o'clock shift bled into the 7. Sun Hee was already there, the gouvernante, ring of keys at her hip, sorting linens into the graphite bins with a face that had forgotten how to be surprised by anything. He'll want the tuxedo pressed once more before 8, Sun Hee said without looking up. It's pressed, it's hung, it's logged. Then log it twice. You know how he is. Yvette didn't answer that because she didn't know how. He was. In 8 months in the Kang mansion, she had been within 10 feet of Kang Min-jae, perhaps a dozen times, and each time she had been furniture. She had refilled his water, and he had not seen the glass move. She had held a door, and he had walked through the space where she stood, as if the space were empty. That was the arrangement. She cleaned. They didn't see. It suited her fine. Invisible people don't get blamed, and don't get fired, and don't get sent home to a mother who needs the money more than the daughter needs her pride. She pulled the shift sheet toward her and ran her finger down the column. There, near the bottom, in Sun Hee's cramped hand. Uniforme Cinza, Y. Cole, Retirado, Manchas. Yvette stopped. My old uniform's gone? Sun Hee kept sorting. Stained past saving. I pulled it 3 days ago. New one's in your locker. Which uniform? The one from the wine service? The one with the marks on the sleeve. Does it matter which? It mattered. Yvette knew exactly which uniform because she logged her own the way she logged everything. The Cinza dress with the marks on the right cuff. Marks that were not wine. Marks she had never been able to name. Faint amber smudges she'd picked up the night she'd carried a delivery crate up from the Han van because the porter hadn't shown. She had meant to have it tested one day. She had meant a lot of things. Where did it go? Sun Hee finally looked up. Her eyes were tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. To the laundry. Where stained things go, Yvette. A pause. Don't chase your own dirty laundry through this house. It never ends well. It was almost kind, the way she said it. Almost a warning. Yvette would remember later that it had been both. New one's a good fit? Sun Hee added, softer. I'll manage. She wrote it in the notebook anyway. Uniforme Cinza, cuff marks, removido por SAH, 3 días atrás. Enviado a lavandería. Confirmar destino. Then she snapped the rubber band back over the spine and went to work. At 9 she ate standing up in the staff kitchen. Rice, a cold egg, half a pear she'd saved from the fruit that came back untouched from the drawing room. She counted while she chewed. Not calories, money. $412 in the envelope taped behind the mirror in her rented room. 210 more coming Friday. The clinic in Elmhurst wanted $800 a month for the physical therapy alone, and the therapy was the cheap part. Her mother's hands, her mother's legs. The stroke had taken the left side and left the right just strong enough to make Evelyn stubborn about not needing help. 800 a month, 210 on Friday. She did the arithmetic the way some people said prayers, over and over, moving the numbers around to see if a different order made them bigger. It never did, but the counting steadied her. It always had. Numbers didn't lie and didn't pity you and didn't leave a stain. Her father had counted too, at the end, in a hospital bed in a city they couldn't afford. Days, then hours, then nothing. Evelyn had held his hand and Yvette had held the bills. 13 years old and already the one who did the math. That was the year she learned that dignity was a thing you bought in installments, and that the people who told you money didn't matter had never watched it run out. She wiped the pear juice off her thumb and pulled out her phone and called. Her mother answered on the fourth ring, the way she always did, so no one would think she'd been sitting by the phone. "There's my girl. How'd the appointment go?" "Doctor says I'm a marvel of modern medicine." A wet laugh. "He says I need the 12-week program, and I said, honey, I need a lot of things." Yvette closed her eyes. "You're doing the 12 weeks. With what money, baby?" "With my money. That's what it's for." A silence stretched, the kind that had a whole argument folded up inside it. An argument they'd already had a dozen ways. Evelyn Cole had raised her daughter to work with her hands and hold her head up, and it cost her something every week to watch that daughter iron another family's shirts to pay for her mother's therapy. "You still up there with those cold people," Evelyn said. "Not a question. They pay on time. That's the lowest bar a person can set for a place, Yvette." "It's the bar I've got, Mama." She heard her mother breathe. Then, "You're worth 10 of every one of them. You hear me? 10. A beat. Bring me those little chocolates when you come. The ones with the gold paper. Don't buy them. Steal them from the rich people. They won't miss them." Yvette laughed, and it surprised her, and it hurt. "I'll bring the chocolates." "Mama, 12 weeks starts Monday," Evelyn said, and there was iron in it now. The same iron she'd used to get them through the year with the hospital bills, the voice that ended discussions. "You already decided. I can hear it. You decided the day the doctor said the word. So stop asking me for permission to save my life, baby. It's embarrassing for both of us." Yvette pressed her lips together. "I'll bring the chocolates," she said again, because it was the only tenderness her mother would let through the door. "The gold ones. Mark my words, girl. I'll know if you cheaped out," and she hung up before her daughter could hear whether she was crying. Yvette stood in the staff kitchen with the phone warm against her ear and the pear going brown in her hand. Then she straightened her apron and went back up the narrow stairs, because there was a dinner service in an hour, and stained things went to the laundry and daughters went to work. The dinner was for 8, and the 8 were the kind of people who arrived in cars that idled at the curb with the engines running. Yvette worked the floor in the new Cinza dress. Sun Hee had been right. It fit. And she moved through the drawing room the way she'd learned to move, close enough to serve, far enough to disappear. She refilled water. She cleared the crab. She kept her notebook thought running in the back of her mind. The private ledger no page ever saw. Who sat where? Who touched what? Whose glass came back with the rim wiped clean of any print at all? She had set this table 100 times, and she read it now like the notebook she carried. Every place a page. The fork angled a degree wrong at the third setting. She'd fix it on the next pass. The candle at the far end guttering because someone had cracked a window. The bread untouched. In this house, the bread was always untouched. These were people who had learned that wanting a thing where others could see you was a weakness, and so they wanted nothing, out loud, ever. Han Jun-sok was here, Unso's brother, in a terno chinsa metallico. Thin gloves he never took off, not even to eat. He ate very little. He watched the room the way Yvette watched it, and once, only once, his eyes crossed hers, and she felt the difference between his watching and hers. She watched to serve. He watched to catalog. Kang Hae-suk sat at the head, spine like a fireplace poker, and when she spoke, the table quieted. She spoke about the merger the way other people spoke about weather, a thing that was coming, that could not be stopped, that would soak everyone standing in it. The Han accounts fold into ours in 3 weeks. Then we are one house. She lifted her glass a centimeter. No one drank until she did. And there, at her right hand, was Min Jae. Yvette had a job at the table, and the job put her behind his chair with the wine, and for the first time in 8 months, she was close enough to see the tattoo, the dark dragon that started near his left ear and ran down under his collar. Close enough to see that he wasn't listening to his mother. He was looking at his phone, screen tilted so the table couldn't read it, jaw set, thumb still. She leaned in to pour. Her sleeve, the right cuff, came within an inch of his shoulder. He caught her wrist. Not hard, but fast. Faster than a man who'd been ignoring her all night should have been able to move. And his eyes came up off the phone and landed on her cuff, on the faint amber ghost the new dress didn't have, because the new dress was clean, and something flickered across his face that she couldn't name. Confusion, then something colder behind it. "This is a new uniform," he said. Quiet. Only for her. Yvette's pulse jumped in the wrist he held. "Yes, sir. Since 3 days ago. The old one. Retired, sir." And stains. His grip didn't tighten, but it didn't let go. Around them, the table went on. Hae-suk's voice rolling over the merger. Yoon-so laughing at something Jun-suk murmured. None of them saw. That was the thing about being invisible. It cut both ways. "What kind of stains?" Min Jae said. The question was wrong. Everything about the question was wrong. The master of the house did not ask the wine girl about her sleeves, did not know she had sleeves, did not know she existed. Yvette had spent 8 months being furniture, and now the furniture was being interrogated at his mother's dinner table with a bottle of Burgundy tilting in her free hand. "I don't know, sir," she said, and it was the truth, and it was the most dangerous thing she'd said all year. He let go of her wrist. "Pour," he said, and went back to his phone, and she poured, and her hand was steady, because she had made it be steady, and inside her apron the notebook sat against her hip like a stone. She finished the table. She cleared the crab shells and refilled the water and fixed the fork that sat a degree wrong, and the whole time she felt his attention where the tattoo disappeared under his collar, a heat on the side of her face that had nothing to do with the candles. He wasn't looking at her. She'd have sworn to it. And yet twice more that hour, when she passed behind his chair, his thumb went still on the phone, the way a man goes quiet when he's listening for a sound he heard once and can't place. Across the table, Yoon-so watched them both. She watched the way Yvette had learned to watch, not with her eyes, but with the corner of them, the glance that costs nothing and misses nothing. When Yvette lifted the empty water carafe and stepped back toward the service door, Yoon-seo's gaze followed her out and did not come back to the table until the door had swung shut. None of them saw the girl, but 2 of them, for 2 different reasons, had started to look. She logged it in the linen room at midnight, alone, the door wedged with a folded towel because the latch had been broken since spring. MK asked about the cuff marks on the retired uniform. He knew it was retired. He knew there were marks. He should not know I exist. She read it back. She added, "Same night, EH asked about my notebook. Same night I found unlabeled solvent from the Han van in his dressing room. Same night EH asked how long I'll stay." 4 small facts, and between them a shape she couldn't see yet, the way you feel a step in the dark before your foot finds it. Her thumb found the worn corner of the cover. 8 months of pages. She'd started the notebook out of pride, really. A way to prove, if anyone ever asked, that she was good at the one thing they'd let her do. She had never imagined it would matter to anyone but her. She turned back through the pages now, quickly, and saw how many of them touched the Han family without her ever meaning them to. The crate she'd carried, the solvent she couldn't name, the van at the service door on nights it had no reason to be there. She had been keeping a record of something for months, and only tonight did it occur to her that a record was a dangerous thing to be the only one holding. She should have stopped there. She knew the rule. Sun-hee had said it plain. Don't chase your own dirty laundry through this house. Instead, she got up and went to the laundry. The main laundry was in the sub-level, past the wine cellar, a long, low room of steel machines and rolling racks and the graphite canvas bins that traveled between the mansion and the outside service twice a week. The overhead lights were off. The pilot lamps on the machines threw just enough red to walk by. The room smelled of hot cotton and something sharper under it, the chemical bite she'd been chasing all night without naming. She stood at the mouth of the aisle and let her eyes adjust. Somewhere, a dryer had finished and gone quiet, its drum still ticking as the metal cooled. 200 garments hung between her and the far wall. Everything in this house passed through here. Every spill, every secret, every shirt with a story on the collar. And someone with the run of this room could make a story disappear, or send it somewhere it would grow. She knew her own uniform. She'd know it in the dark. Right cuff, amber marks, the small mend at the third button where she'd caught it on a drawer. She went down the intake rack, garment by garment, reading tags with her fingers, the way her mother read faces. It wasn't there. Stained things went to the laundry. That was the whole architecture of the house. Dirt went down, out, away, into these bins, and out the service door, and it stopped being anyone's problem. But her uniform hadn't stopped in the laundry. It had passed through. 3 days ago, Sun-hee pulled it, and it was gone. And the intake log by the door had a line for it. She found the line. She'd found every line in this house. Cinza, YC, Retirado 20. And next to the destination column, where every other garment said interna, hers said a single word in a hand that wasn't Sun-hee's. Han. Sent out. To the Han family's own laundry. Her uniform, with the marks on the cuff, the marks she'd picked up carrying a Han crate, the marks that matched a solvent that was not household issue. Packed into a bin and sent to the people it came from. Yvette stood very still in the red half-dark. She did not understand it, but she understood enough to be afraid, and she had learned long ago that fear was information, that her body knew a danger before her mind could argue her out of it. She took out her phone and photographed the logline. Han, in the destination column, in a stranger's hand. Behind her, the service door lock turned over. She killed the phone screen and stepped between 2 racks, hangers swallowing her, apron pressed flat to keep from swinging the canvas. The door swung in, a wedge of corridor light. 2 figures. She saw the polished shoes first, then the thin gloves, then the marfim hem of a skirt. Not here. Not with the staff floor right above. Yun-so, low. The staff floor is asleep. Jun-sok. And even if it weren't, who's going to believe the help over us? That's not the point. The point is timing. You move too early, and the whole thing. I know the sequence. A pause. A rolling rack squealed as one of them pushed it aside. Yvette held her breath and became furniture, became invisible, the one skill this house had drilled into her marrow. 3 days, Yun-so said. After that it's clean. After that it never existed. After that, Jun-suk agreed. She never existed either. The shoes turned. The gloves rose to pull the door. And in the last slice of corridor light, before the dark came back down, Yun-so Han glanced once toward the intake rack, toward the exact line in the log that said Han in a stranger's hand, and smiled at it, the way a woman smiles at a door she's already locked. The service door shut. The lock turned over. Yvette stood in the red dark between the racks with her mother's 12 weeks in one pocket and her own name in the other, and understood, without a single fact she could yet prove, that she had just been sorted, like linen, like anything stained past saving, into the pile that went out the service door and never came back. She waited until her legs would hold her. Then she took out the notebook, and by the light of a machine pilot lamp, in letters smaller and steadier than her hands had any right to make, she began to write down everything she had heard. The pen ran dry on the last word. Yvette shook it, pressed it against the page, and finished the sentence in a scratch of colorless grooves. Then she sat with her back to the machines and listened to the building breathe above her. Someone had to open that door eventually. Sun-hee unlocked the sub-solo at 5 to prep the linens. That was hours away. Yvette pressed her palm flat against the concrete and made herself think past the fear, the way she'd learned to think past a stain, one step, then the next. She found the release. The service door had a manual latch on the inside for exactly this reason. She'd simply never had cause to touch it. It gave with a hard click. The corridor beyond was empty. She climbed the back stairs 2 at a time, notebook against her chest, and reached her attic room before the house woke. She slept 90 minutes. She did not dream. By 7, the mansion had its ordinary sounds again. Carts, kettles, the low chime of the elevator. Yvette moved through the morning routine with her hands doing what they always did, and her mind somewhere colder. She carried breakfast trays. She turned the beds she was assigned. She kept the notebook in her apron pocket, against her hip, where she could feel it. At 9, the house changed pitch. It started as a raised voice from the second floor, then a second voice, then the particular silence that follows people being told to stop talking. Yvette was refilling the flower water on the landing when Sun-hee came fast down the corridor, keys jangling at her waist, face the color of paper. "The safe," Sun-hee said. "To no one. To everyone. The wall safe in the east dressing room." Yvette set the picture down. The east dressing room was Min-jae's. She knew it the way she knew all the rooms she cleaned. The drawer that stuck, the loose brass on the closet rail, the small square of wall behind the standing mirror that wasn't wall at all. She had dusted the mirror 100 times and never once touched what lay behind it. By the time she reached the doorway, 4 people were already inside. Kang Hae-suk stood at the center in her structured dark and olive, spine like a rod, one hand closed over the family ring on the other. Min-jae was crouched at the open safe, jaw tight, the hollow black square of it gaping at hip height. Yoon-seo stood near the window with both hands pressed to her own collarbone. Yoon-suk leaned in the far corner, thin gloves on, taking in the room the way he always took in a room. "Gone," Min-jae said. He rose. "The onyx is gone." Yvette stopped at the threshold. She had never seen the necklace. She only knew the name of it from the household ledger, the Kang onyx, listed among the pieces no staff member was permitted to handle, insured at a number she'd assumed was a typo the first time she read it. "Who has the combination?" Hae-suk asked. Her voice was very even, and that evenness was worse than shouting. "3 people," Min-jae said. "You, me." He looked at the safe, "and the record of who opened it last. Then read the record." He didn't answer that. Something moved behind his eyes and stayed there. Yoon-seo turned from the window. "It doesn't matter who opened it," she said. "It matters who could have reached it." Her gaze swept the room and landed, without haste, on Yvette in the doorway. "Who cleans this room?" Every head turned. Yvette felt the weight of it arrive on her all at once. The 4 faces, the open safe, the word. "Cleans." Placed at her feet like something she'd tracked in. "I do," she said. "Alone?" "Yes." "Every day?" 6 days, Yvette said. "Sunday is Mrs. Park." Yoon-seo let the silence hold a beat too long. "So you're in this room, alone, every day but one." "Dusting," Yvette said. "I've never touched the safe. I didn't know it was a safe until this morning." "Of course you didn't." Min-jae raised a hand. Not at Yvette, at the room. "Enough." He looked at his mother. "We call it in. There's a protocol. The piece is insured. The insurer requires a report within the hour, or the claim collapses." "We do not," Hae-suk said, "bring police into this house 3 weeks before the merger." "We bring them in," Min-jae said, "or we lose the coverage, and every eye at the table asks why the Kangs quietly ate a loss the size of a building." The 2 of them held it. Yvette watched a mother and a son measure each other across an open safe, and understood that the necklace was already the smaller problem in the room. Joon-suk pushed off the wall. "There's a simpler question," he said mildly. "Before anyone calls anyone." He looked at Yvette's apron. "The staff have lockers." "Wardrobes. It would clear the young woman completely to look, and clear the rest of us of wondering." "That's not how," Min-jae started. "It's exactly how," Yoon-seo said. "If she has nothing, we've lost nothing but 10 minutes. Yvette's mouth went dry. 3 days, she thought. Then it's clean, then it never existed. The words from the laundry came back with the temperature of the concrete floor still in them. "Search it," she said. They all looked at her. "My wardrobe, my locker. Search them. Now, with all of you standing there." She kept her voice level by giving each word the same small effort she gave to a difficult seam. "I want witnesses to what you find. Not one person. All of you." The room adjusted around the offer. Yoon-seo's brows lifted a fraction, and for the first time that morning, something in her poise slipped. A small recalculation, quickly hidden. Joon-suk's gloved fingers went still on the rail. A guilty woman begged, a guilty woman wept, or ran, or named some other servant. A guilty woman did not stand in a doorway and ask to be turned inside out in front of the family she'd robbed. "You'll regret volunteering," Yoon-seo said. "I've regretted less honest things," Yvette said. For half a second, something crossed Min-jae's face that she couldn't name. Then Hae-suk said, "Take Mrs. Park, take 2 others, go now." They went in a procession that felt obscene. Sun-hee first with her keys, then Yvette, then Jun-sok trailing his gloved hand along the corridor rail, Yoon-so behind him with her heels clicking the count. Min-jae came last, and Yvette was aware of him behind her the whole way up, the size of him, the quiet. The staff wardrobes lined the attic corridor, narrow gray steel doors, each with a name card in a brass slot. Yvette's was third from the end. She stepped back from it and put her hands where everyone could see them. "Mrs. Park has the master key," she said. "I'll touch nothing." Sun-hee's hand shook on the ring. She found the key. She fit it to the lock, and in the second before she turned it, her eyes came up and met Yvette's, and Yvette saw something there she filed away and did not yet understand. Not surprise. Dread. The specific dread of a person who already knows what a drawer contains. The door swung open. 2 spare uniforms on hooks, a pair of flat shoes, a shoebox of receipts, a folded cardigan, and on the shelf above, half tucked under the cardigan's edge where a careless hand had left it, a fold of black velvet cloth. Nobody breathed. "Don't touch it," Min-jae said sharply, to Jun-sok, whose gloved hand had already begun to lift. Jun-sok stopped. "By all means," he said. "You do the honors." Min-jae reached past Yvette. He drew the velvet out with 2 fingers and let it fall open on his palm. Onyx, a collar of black stones, cold and deep, set in a lattice of old gold. It sat in his hand, catching the corridor light like a held breath. Yoon-so's exhale was almost gentle. "Well," she said. Yvette looked at the necklace and felt the floor tilt. She had never seen it. She had never touched it. It had been in her wardrobe under her cardigan, and every person here had just watched it come out of a space that only she and Sun-hee could open. "I didn't put that there," she said. "It came out quiet. Too quiet to matter." "They never do," Yoon-so said. "Mrs. Park," Yvette turned. "You have a key. I have a key. Tell them. Tell them when this was." Sun-hee looked at the floor. Her mouth worked. And then, in a voice scraped thin, she said the thing that changed the shape of the day. "I saw her. 2 nights ago, in the east dressing room, after hours, at the mirror." The corridor went silent in a new way. "That's not true," Yvette said. "I saw her," Sun-hee repeated, still to the floor. "I didn't want to say." Yvette turned to Min-jae because he was the only one still looking at the necklace instead of at her. "2 nights ago, I was in the linen room, and the staff kitchen and my room. I logged it. It's in my notebook. Times. I write everything down." "We know," Yoon-so said. "You write everything down." She said it the way you'd note a symptom. Jun-sok drew a slow breath through his nose. "So we have the piece. We have a witness, and we have a young woman who keeps a private ledger of this family's movements." He looked at Min-jae. "I'd say the protocol handles itself now. No insurer, no police. An internal matter resolved internally." "Resolved how?" Min-jae said. "Flat. Not really a question. She's dismissed. The piece is returned. The claims never filed." Jun-sok spread his gloved hands. "Nothing happened. Cleanest possible outcome for a house 3 weeks from a merger. Nothing happened." Yvette heard it and heard, underneath it, the other sentence. "Then it never existed." And understood she was standing inside a plan she had overheard being built. "You'd let her walk out," Min-jae said. "I'd let this end," Jun-sok said, "before it costs you a headline." Min-jae closed his hand over the onyx. He turned to Yvette, and for a long moment he simply looked at her. Not the pulse grab of last night, not the boss glancing past a servant. He looked at her the way she looked at a garment when something about the stain didn't match the story she'd been told about it. "You asked to be searched," he said. "Yes. In front of all of us. Yes. Why would a thief do that?" Yoon-so made a small sound. "Because a thief who's already planted the piece elsewhere counts on you looking exactly here." But Min-jae kept his eyes on Yvette, and Yvette held them, and did not look away, and did not cry, and did not do a single thing a guilty woman's body does. She had cleaned up after these people for 8 months. She knew what performance looked like from the inside. She let him see that she wasn't performing. Take her downstairs, Haisuk said from the head of the corridor. None of them had heard her come up. Sitting room. She stays in the house until this is settled. Min-jae, with me. They didn't touch her. Nobody laid a hand on her. That would have been a story. Instead, Sun-hee walked her down to the small sitting room off the service hall and stood by the door like a jailer who couldn't meet her prisoner's eyes. Yvette sat on the edge of a chair, with her notebook in both hands and her heart going hard. "Mrs. Park," she said quietly. Sun-hee flinched. "You know I wasn't in that room 2 nights ago." "Nothing. You took my old uniform 3 days ago. You told me not to chase my own laundry. And this morning your hand was shaking before that door even opened." Yvette kept her voice low. "Even. The voice you use on a stain you can't afford to spread. Somebody told you what you'd find. Somebody told you what to say." Sun-hee's jaw trembled. Her eyes went bright. For 1 second, Yvette thought the whole thing would break open right there. Then the older woman turned her face to the wall. "I have a grandson," she whispered, so low it was almost nothing. "I have a grandson, and I need this position." It wasn't a confession. It was close enough to one that Yvette felt it settle into her chest like a stone. "Who told you?" Yvette said. "One name, that's all I need." Sun-hee shook her head, small and fast, a woman refusing a ledge. "You don't understand what they are." "Then help me understand it." "I unlocked your wardrobe this morning like they told me to," Sun-hee whispered, "and I already knew what was in it, because I was told what was in it before I turned the key." Her hands twisted the ring of keys until the metal bit. "That's all I can give you. That's all I can carry." She would not say the name, but she had just told Yvette the one thing that mattered. The necklace had been placed, and the placing had been ordered, and Sun-hee had been handed her lines the way a maid is handed a tray. She opened the notebook. She wrote the date. She wrote the time. She wrote, "PSH, I have a grandson. I need this position." And under it, because she had trained her hand for years to record before her heart could argue, she wrote, She was afraid before the door opened. Above her, on the second floor, in the study with the door shut, Kang Min-jae was not looking at his mother. He was looking at his phone. Hye-suk was still talking. The merger, the timing, the necessity of making the girl and the problem both disappear before Thursday. Min-jae let the words go past him. He had done a thing an hour ago, in the dressing room, that he hadn't decided to do and now couldn't undo, and he was waiting to learn what it had caught. When the search party had left for the attic, he had stayed behind alone with the open safe for 90 seconds. Long enough to do one thing. He had called Yoon-so, a reflex, the man calling his fiancée in a crisis, the most ordinary act in the world, and she had not picked up, and the call, connecting to nothing, had rolled to the ambient line the way calls did in this house's antique system, the one that stayed open a few seconds too long. He had heard her voice, not to him, in another room, close to another phone, not knowing his was live. He had heard her say a name, Jun-suk. He had heard her say, "The wardrobe." He had heard her say, "The third one, under the cardigan." He had heard her say, "Make Park swear she saw the girl at the mirror." And then, faint, brushed with something that in 11 years he had never once heard aimed at him, amusement. And after Thursday she's gone, and it never happened. He had stood in front of the open safe with his own fiancée's plan in his ear, and he had done the only thing his hands knew to do faster than his mind could stop them. He had recorded the last few seconds. Now he stood with his back to his mother and looked at the small red bar on the screen, the little sound wave frozen mid-word, and felt the floor of 11 years go out from under him. Min-jae. Haisuk's voice sharpened. "You're not listening." "I'm listening." "Then you agree. The girl leaves tonight. Quietly. We give her a sum, she signs, she's gone. The insurer never hears the word. Theft." Jun-suk is right, for once. He turned around. He put the phone in his breast pocket, face against his chest, the way you'd hold a thing you weren't ready to spend. "No," he said. Hye-suk's eyes narrowed. "No? We don't pay her off. We don't sign anything tonight." He walked to the window and looked down at the courtyard, where a Han laundry van, he registered it now, the second time he'd seen it this week, at an hour that made no sense, sat idling by the service door. I want to know how a piece worth more than a wing of this house ended up under a cardigan belonging to the one person who volunteered to be searched. Because she's not clever. Or because she's the only one in this house, Min-jae said slowly, who wanted witnesses. Hae-suk stood very straight. You're letting a servant confuse you 3 weeks before. Mother, he said it quietly, and it stopped her. How many people have the combination? The pause was a fraction of a second. But he was watching for it now, the way you watch for the second stain the story didn't mention. You and me, Hae-suk said. That's what I thought too, Min-jae said, and he left it there, unfinished. A thread he had just discovered ran somewhere he did not want it to run. They came for her at dusk. Not Jun-sok, not Yoon-so. Min-jae himself, alone, filling the sitting room doorway. Sun-hee slipped out past him and was gone before Yvette could catch her eye. He shut the door. He didn't sit. He stood with his hands loose at his sides, and Yvette rose because you rose when he entered a room, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Sit, he said, please. She didn't sit. She kept the notebook against her. You've decided I stole it, she said. So decide out loud. I'd rather hear it than wait for it. I haven't decided anything. Everyone else has. I'm not everyone else. He crossed to the small table and set something on it. Not the necklace. A glass of water. He pushed it an inch toward her. Such a small thing. She looked at it and did not touch it, and he saw that too. You logged your movements 2 nights ago, he said. You said it's in the notebook. It is. Show me. She held the notebook tighter. So you can tell me my own handwriting proves nothing, or take it and lose it. This is the only record I have of anything in this house. I'm not handing it to a Kang. Something flickered at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile. Recognition. Fair, he said. He was quiet a moment. Then, the onyx was in your wardrobe. A witness places you at the safe. By every rule of this house, you should already be gone, with money in your pocket and a signature on a page swearing none of this happened. He watched her. That's the offer my mother wants me to make you, tonight. Then make it, Yvette said, and I'll say no. Why? Because if I take your money and sign your paper, then I stole it. Forever. To my mother, to anyone who ever asks why I left. Her voice didn't rise. She kept it flat, kept it clean. I didn't take your necklace. I'm not going to buy the right to be called a thief. Min-jae looked at her for a long time. Then he took the phone out of his breast pocket. He set it on the table beside the untouched glass of water, screen up, and he pressed a single point on it. The room filled with a voice. It was Yoon-so's. Yvette knew it in the first syllable, the same voice that had asked her last night how long she meant to stay. It was low, close to some other phone, amused, and it said, clear as a bell in the quiet room. The third one, under the cardigan. And make Park swear she saw the girl at the mirror. After Thursday she's gone and it never happened. The recording ended. The little sound wave went flat. Yvette didn't move. The glass of water sat between them, and the phone sat between them, and 8 months of carrying trays up these stairs sat between them, and she felt the whole floor of the last 2 days rearrange itself into a shape she had already half drawn in the dark of the laundry. You heard that when, she said. This morning, before the search. His jaw was tight. The safe was open. I called her, she didn't pick up. The line stayed live. He looked at the phone as if it were something he'd pulled out of a wound. I recorded the last of it. I didn't decide to. I just did. You've had this all day. Yes. And you let them walk me down here. You let Park lie to my face. You let your brother stand in a corner and offer to make me. Never happen. And you had this in your pocket the whole time. He didn't look away from her. Yes. Yvette's hands were shaking now, finally, and she let them, because there was no one left in the room she needed to hide it from. Why? She said. Why show me? Why not walk it straight to your mother, to the police, to whoever? Because the moment I play that upstairs, Min-jae said, my fiancé and my brother know I have it, and whatever the 3 days were for, he saw her flinch at. 3 days? And his eyes changed, and she understood he'd heard that phrase too, somewhere, was fitting it now to the same puzzle. Whatever it's for, it finishes faster than I can stop it, including you. The van in the courtyard. The 3 days. Then it's clean, then it never existed. Yvette looked at the man who owned this house and understood that they had both been standing at the edge of the same dark hole, from opposite sides, all day. "You need something," she said slowly. "You didn't come down here to save me. You came down here because I'm the only person in this house who's been writing it all down." She lifted the notebook a bare inch. "Aren't I?" For the first time since he'd walked in, Kang Min-jae had no answer ready. His hand went, without his willing it, to the tattoo at his collar. A small tell she had never seen from him, the boss touching the one mark on his body that no suit could cover. "I came down here," he said finally, "because you're the only person under this roof I can't afford to have lying to me. And the only one who isn't." He looked at the notebook, then at her. "That's a strange thing to owe a stranger." "We're not strangers," Yvette said. "You grabbed my wrist last night and asked about my stains. You already knew something was wrong in this house. You just didn't know it had a name." Outside, in the courtyard below, the Han laundry van's engine turned over, and its headlights swept once across the sitting room ceiling as it pulled away from the service door. 3 days early, or right on time, depending on which of them was counting. Yvette watched the light cross the ceiling and disappear. Somewhere above them a door closed, and then another, the house settling into its evening the way it did every night, as if nothing under its roof had shifted at all. But it had. She could feel it in the room like a change in pressure before weather. 2 days ago she had been invisible. Now the boss of this house stood across a table from her with a recording that could burn his own wedding to the ground, and he had brought it to a maid before he brought it to his mother. That meant something. She wasn't sure yet whether it meant safety or only a different kind of danger. Then she set the notebook down on the table, beside the water she still hadn't touched, and looked at him, and said, "Play it again." He played it again. Yoon-so's voice filled the small room a second time, thin through the phone's speaker but exact. The third, "Under the cardigan," and make Park swear she saw the girl in the mirror. "After Thursday she's gone and it never happened." Yvette listened without moving her hands. She was reading the words the way she read a stain, for what made them, not for how they sounded. "Stop," she said, before the recording ran out. Min-jae's thumb pressed the screen. Silence came back into the room. "You've had that since morning," she said. "Since before the safe was opened for the others." She let that sit. He had stood in the closet at 9, crouched at the empty safe, and named her cleaning schedule to his mother while this was already in his pocket. She had offered herself for a search with this already recorded. She had watched Sun-hee's hands shake at the attic door with this already recorded. "You could have ended it in the closet," she said. "One sentence. You play that and no one touches my cupboard. And Yoon-so hears it the same hour." He set the phone face down. "She has 3 weeks and a wedding. Corner her early and she moves faster, not slower. You'd have been out of this house by tonight. Paid, silent, gone. That was already her plan. I'd have handed it to her. So you let them search me to buy yourself time." "I let them search you because you asked to be searched." His jaw worked. "I didn't know you'd do that. No one asks for that. I asked because the alternative was worse." She turned her cup a quarter turn on the table and stopped touching it. A quiet dismissal. "The necklace found later. My name on a file no one shows me. I've watched this house make people disappear on paper. I wasn't going to disappear quietly." He looked at her then, longer than a man looks at staff. Outside, a door closed somewhere in the wing. Both of them heard it. Neither moved toward it. "Here's where we are," Min-jae said. "My mother wants you paid and signed tonight. Jun-suk wants you dismissed as an internal matter. No claim filed. Yoon-so wants you gone after Thursday. 3 people, 3 timelines, and every one of them ends with you outside this house and the story sealed behind you." "And you," Yvette said. "What do you want?" "I want to know what you know." There it was. She had guessed it in the last hour, and now he'd said it plain. He had not come down the stairs for her. He'd come for the notebook that had sat in the crook of her arm since the first day he grabbed her wrist. "The book," she said. "You've been writing in this house for 8 months." He didn't reach for it. That was deliberate. She saw the restraint cost him. Dates. Deliveries. The van at the service door. A solvent that doesn't belong to us. You don't know what half of it means yet. "I do. Or I can find out. Alone, I have a recording that names 2 people and proves nothing about how or why. Alone, you have a book that proves patterns and names no crime. Together. Don't. She raised one finger, level, not sharp. Don't make it a speech. He stopped. Say the trade in one line, she said, the way you'd say it to a man across a table. His mouth moved toward something that wasn't quite a smile. Your book. My protection. We find who's really running this before Thursday. No, Yvette said. The word landed flat and total. She watched it reach him. The small backward shift of his shoulders. A man used to the second syllable being yes. No? Not like that. She pulled the notebook off the table and held it in her lap, both hands flat on the cover. You want what's in here, fine. But I've been in rooms where a handshake with a Kang meant nothing the next morning. My uniform went to your laundry, and I have a photograph of the line that says so, in handwriting that isn't the housekeeper's. That's how this family keeps records. Someone else's hand, someone else's name. I'm not signing my safety to a voice. Then what? Paper. She said it the way he'd said his one line. Your terms in writing. Mine too. A muscle moved under the dragon at his throat. He didn't touch it this time. He caught himself before his hand left the table. You want a contract, he said, in the middle of a frame. I want a contract because I'm in the middle of a frame. She opened the notebook to a blank page near the back, past all the entries. You have a pen. Use it or lend it. He watched her a moment longer. Then he took the pen from his inside pocket and set it on the table between them, and that was its own kind of answer. But he didn't let go of the pen. Before you write anything, he said, you should know what I'm going to say to my mother, and to the insurer, if it comes to that. Yvette waited. The necklace was in your cupboard. That's a fact. 3 people watched come true. His voice was even, the voice of a man laying out a move he doesn't like. I can't unsay where it was found, so I'm not going to try. I'm going to say I put it there. That I asked you to hold it. That I gave it to you to keep, off the ledger, because I don't trust the safe. No theft. No claim. No police. A private arrangement between me and my staff that got misread. She understood it in a breath, and her stomach turned with it. That makes it worse for me. It keeps you out of a cell. He held her eyes. There's no version where the necklace was in your cupboard and you come out clean tonight. Either you stole it or I handed it to you. One of those ends with the police, the other ends with people whispering about why the boss of the house is giving black onyx to the maid in the dark. A muscle moved in his jaw. I know what that story does to you. I'm telling you to your face so you hear it from me and not from a hallway. Yvette sat with it. He was right, and it was filthy. A thief or a kept woman, the house would hand her one of the two and call it mercy. The lie protected her body and soiled her name, and he'd chosen her body and hadn't asked her first. You decided that already, she said. I decided it in the closet, when I chose not to play the recording. He set the pen down at last. This is the story that buys us until Thursday. It's ugly. It's the one that keeps you here, near your book, instead of in a station giving a statement Yoon-so writes for you. And I get no say in the version of me that walks around this house. You get this. He pushed the pen the last inch toward her. You get everything on paper. If I'm going to dirty your name to keep you safe, then every promise I make you gets signed, so the name comes back clean when this is over. With proof I lied to protect you, not because there was ever anything to hide. He held her gaze. That's the trade. My lie in the open, my hand on paper underneath it. Then she picked it up. First, she said, and wrote as she spoke. Sun-hee is suspended tonight, off the floor. She's the one who turned the key and swore the lie, and she's the one who'll break first when it counts. I don't want her cleaning up her own tracks or being cleaned up by someone else. Suspended, paid, kept in this house where I can find her. That tells Yoon-so something's wrong. It tells Yoon-so the family is embarrassed and closing ranks, which is what your mother wants anyway. She didn't look up from the page. Suspend her for the theft. Publicly. It reads as punishment. It's protection. He was quiet a beat. Fine. Suspended, kept, paid. What else? Say it back to me first. Yvette held the pen off the page. So I know we mean the same thing. Suspended how? Kept where? Paid by whom? His eyes narrowed a fraction. You want me to recite my own sentence. I want to hear the words leave your mouth in the order I wrote them. She tapped the line. That's how I know a thing is real in this house. Not a nod. The words. For a second she thought he'd refuse. Then he said it, flat and exact, suspended from the floor tonight, kept in her room on the grounds, paid at her rate from the family account. And she made a small mark beside the entry when he finished, the mark she used for confirmed. I grade everything, she said, moving the pen down the page. A lawyer, she wrote it, mine, not the family's, not a name your mother gives me. If a file exists with my name on it, and it does, or it will, I want someone who answers to me looking at it. You pay. I choose. You don't know any lawyers. I know one who does divorces in Elmhurst near my mother's clinic and owes the world nothing. The pen moved steadily. He'll do. You pay the retainer tomorrow. Min-jae leaned back an inch. He was recalculating, she could see it, the way a man does when the person across the table turns out to have read the same book he had. Third, Yvette said, my mother. For the first time the pen paused. Evelyn Cole, she said. 56, stroke, left side. She starts 12 weeks of physical therapy Monday at a clinic in Elmhurst. $800 a month, and I have 412 saved, and 210 coming Friday. And the reason I clean your closet 6 days a week is that arithmetic. She looked up now. If I'm inside your war, she's a target, a phone number, an address, a clinic that can lose a booking. You will guarantee, on this page, that nothing you or your family does reaches her. Not the clinic, not the apartment, not one phone call. He held her eyes. You think we'd go at your mother? I think Yuna So said she's gone and it never happened about me. In a house where a necklace flew from a safe into my cupboard overnight. Her voice stayed level. I've stopped guessing what people would and wouldn't do. Write it, or I keep the book and take my chances with the lawyer alone. A long silence. Then he nodded. Once. She's untouched on the page. Yvette wrote it. Evelyn Cole. Protected, clinic and residence. No contact of any kind. She underlined it, the way she underlined things that mattered in the front of the book. Fourth. There's a fourth. There are 6. She almost smiled and didn't. Fourth, access. If I'm the one whose patterns crack this open, I don't work blind. I want the household delivery logs, the laundry manifests, the service door schedule, and the visitor register for the last 4 months. I've been writing down what I could see from a hallway. I want to see the pages I couldn't reach. That one moved him more than the others. She watched him weigh it. A man being asked to open the family's paper to a maid. Some of those aren't mine to open, he said. Then open the ones that are, and tell me which you can't, and why. She kept the pen ready over the page. I'll know if you're hiding a door. I've spent 8 months learning which doors in this house don't get opened. He looked at the phone, face down between them, then back at her. The laundry manifests, he said slowly. The service door schedule, the delivery logs, those I can get, the family register, the wing where my mother keeps the merger papers. I can't. Not yet. Write what you can give. Sign it. She turned the page toward him. The one you can't, I'll remember you couldn't. Is that a threat? It's an entry. She tapped the notebook. Everything in here is an entry. That's the whole point of me. Something crossed his face that she couldn't name and didn't try to. He took the pen from where she'd set it down and wrote 3 lines under hers, in a hand that pressed hard into the paper, and initialed them. 5th, Yvette said, taking the pen back. You said 6. 5th, and it's the short one. She wrote it in 4 words and turned it so he could read it upside down. No searches. Not my cupboard. Not my room. Not my person. Not my bag. Not my book. Not my mother's apartment. The last search in this house put a necklace under my cardigan. There won't be a second one. If anyone in your family wants something searched, they come through the lawyer, with a reason on paper, and I'm present. And if my mother orders one anyway, then you'll have signed something that says she can't, and I'll have it in writing that you did. Yvette held his gaze. That's what the page is for. It's not for trust. It's so that when someone breaks it, I know exactly who, and I can prove it. He read the line twice. Then he signed under it without arguing, and she understood that he'd expected worse, or wanted worse, or simply respected the shape of a demand made cleanly. That's 5, he said. You said 6. Yvette closed the pen in her fist and didn't write the 6th yet. She looked at him, the width of his shoulders against the small room, the merger 3 weeks out, the recording that could burn the whole house down and hadn't. The 6th is yours, she said. You want the book, you don't get the book. His stillness changed quality. You don't get the book, she said again. You get me. I read it to you. I tell you what a line means when you need it. I copy out what's useful. But the notebook stays with me, on me, and if it leaves my hands, it leaves them, because I put it somewhere you'll never think to look, with a letter to my lawyer on top of it. She set the pen down. That's the deal. My eyes, my memory, my hands, not my book. Sign that, and we're partners until Thursday. Don't, and I walk out with everything in my apron and you're back to a recording that proves 2 people are unkind. For a moment, he said nothing at all. Then Min-jae reached across the table, not for the notebook, she'd half braced for it, but for the pen. He turned the page to a clean corner and wrote a single line and signed it and pushed it back to her so she could read what he'd agreed to. The book stays with her. She reads it to me. It does not leave her hands. Under it, his name. And under his name, before she could stop him, he'd written one more line she hadn't asked for. And if this goes wrong, it goes wrong on me, not on her mother. Yvette read it twice. She didn't thank him. Thanks would have made it a favor, and she needed it to be a contract. Initial where I initialed, she said. Both pages. Date it. He did. She took the notebook back and pressed her palm flat over the wet ink to feel it was real, then closed the cover and held it against her chest, the way she'd held it all day. Now, she said, Sun-hee, tonight I want to see it done. You don't trust me to do it. I don't trust the space between us saying it and it happening. She stood. Her knees ached from the day. She didn't let it show in how she rose. That's not about you. That's about every promise this house has made me for 8 months and kept for none of them. You want a partner? A partner watches the first thing get done. He stood too, and the room got smaller. Up close, the tattoo ran dark from below his ear into his collar, and she made herself not look at it, because looking felt like flinching, and she was done flinching in this house. There are rules, he said. If we do this, you follow them. When I tell you to leave a room, you leave. When I tell you not to write something down, you don't. When you tell me not to write something down, Yvette said, I'll write down that you told me not to. His jaw tightened. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth moved. You're going to be difficult. I've been difficult since 4 o'clock yesterday, she said. You just started noticing. He picked up the phone and slid it into his jacket, and the recording went with it, the leash they were both holding from opposite ends. Sun-hee's in the service kitchen, he said. Come. You watch, you say nothing, and when it's done you go to your room and you sleep. Because tomorrow the manifests come and you're going to read them till your eyes bleed. I sleep when my mother's protection is on paper and the lawyer's paid. The lawyer's paid tomorrow, the paper's in your hands right now. He held the door. Sleep, Yvette. It was the first time he'd used her name. Not the girl. Not you. She noticed it the way she noticed everything, and filed it, and let none of it reach her face. They went out into the corridor together, the maid and the man whose closet she cleaned, and the house around them held its breath the way houses do when the order inside them has quietly changed and no one has been told yet. The service kitchen was 2 turns and a back stair down. Sun-hee sat at the steel prep table with a cup of tea going cold in front of her, the ring of keys on the table beside it, and when she saw the 2 of them come in together, walking in step, the girl she'd sworn against and the son of the house, her hand went to the keys and closed around them like they could still save her. Mr. Kang, she stood too fast, the stool scraped. I was only... Sit down, Sun-hee. Min-jae's voice had gone flat and quiet, the register Yvette had heard him use with his mother. You're suspended from the floor as of tonight. You keep your pay, you keep your room. You don't touch the family rooms, you don't touch the safes, and you don't leave the grounds without my say. Sun-hee's eyes went from him to Yvette and back, and Yvette watched the arithmetic run behind them. She's told him. He believes her. I'm the one who turned the key. Sir, I only did what... I know what you did. Not loud. Worse than loud. And I know you didn't decide it. That's the only reason you still have a room. He let that land. You're going to stay in this house where I can find you. Do you understand what that means? Sun-hee understood. Yvette watched her understand it. That she was being kept, not spared, held close the way you hold a witness you'll need. The older woman's chin trembled. She looked at Yvette with something between hatred and pleading, and Yvette gave her nothing, because nothing was safer for both of them right now than anything. My grandson, Sun-hee said, very low, is not part of this, Min-jae said, unless you make him part of it by talking to the wrong person before Thursday. Say nothing, to anyone. That's how he stays out of it. The keys pressed white lines into Sun-hee's palm. She nodded. Yvette watched the nod and didn't trust it. A nod was the cheapest thing a frightened person could give. She stepped forward once. Min-jae's eyes flicked to her. A warning. You watch. You say nothing. And she stopped at the edge of the table anyway. Your tea's cold, Yvette said. Nothing else. Just that. Sun-hee looked up at her, startled, as if she'd expected a blow and got weather instead. Her mouth opened, closed. Whatever accusation she'd braced to make, whatever apology she'd braced to swallow, it went nowhere, because Yvette had given her nothing to push against. That was the point. A woman with nothing to push against has to sit with what she did. I'll make you a fresh one before I go up, Yvette said, and moved to the kettle, and the ordinary motion of it, the maid making tea in the maid's kitchen, did more to break Sun-hee than any threat in the room. The older woman's shoulders folded. Her free hand covered her eyes. He said no one would get hurt, Sun-hee whispered. To the table, to the keys, to no one. He said it was just moving a box. Min-jae went very still. Who said? Sun-hee's mouth clamped shut. Yvette set the kettle down without pouring. Her heart moved, but her face stayed level. He, not she. Sun-hee had said he. She filed it exactly where she stood, under the low light, with the water not yet hot, a pronoun the older woman had let slip and would not give again tonight. Yvette didn't press. Pressing now would make Sun-hee dig in, and a witness who digs in stays buried till the last day. She poured the water instead, and set the cup down gently by the keys, and stepped back. Min-jae looked at Yvette, watched. His eyes said, Done. You saw it done. She had. She catalogued it the way she catalogued a treated stain. Date, condition, treatment. Sun-hee suspended, kept, warned, 2230, witnessed. She would write it upstairs, in the book that was hers and stayed hers, on the page after the contract. Go up, Min-jae told her. Both stairs are watched tonight. You're not the one being watched. Remember that. Yvette turned to go. At the door she stopped. The manifests, she said. What time? 7. My study, not my mother's. I'll be there at 6:45, she said. I'm always early. It's the job. She climbed the back stair to the attic with the notebook against her chest and the contract inside it, and the day's last entry already forming in her head. Behind her, in the service kitchen, she heard the low continuation of Min-jae's voice and the smaller sound of Sun-hee's answers, and she didn't slow to hear the words. She'd get them tomorrow, or she wouldn't, and either way she'd write down which. Her room was cold. The window over the yard showed nothing but the dark shape of the garages and, past them, the service gate where the laundry van came and went at hours that made no sense. She sat on the edge of the narrow bed and opened the book and read the contract again by the light of the one lamp, both their hands on the same 2 pages, his heavy print under her steady script, and the line he'd added that she hadn't asked for. If this goes wrong, it goes wrong on me, not on her mother. She didn't believe it the way you believe a kind thing. She believed it the way you believe a signature, as evidence, dated, that a man had once agreed to something, whatever he did later. That was worth more to her than kindness. Kindness left no paper. She turned the page and wrote the day. She wrote Sun-hee suspended and the time and the word witnessed. She wrote lawyer, Elmhurst, retainer tomorrow, and mother, protected on page, clinic plus apartment, and manifests. 07 o'clock. His study, not hers. She wrote no searches, signed, and underlined signed twice. Then she stopped, the pen hovering, and wrote one more line, smaller, in the margin where she kept the things she wasn't sure of yet. He used my name. She looked at it a moment. Then she drew a single line through it, not crossing it out, just marking it, the way she marked entries she'd have to come back to when she understood them. It could mean he'd started to see her as a person. It could mean he'd started to see her as an asset worth naming. 8 months in this house had taught her the two often wore the same face. She capped the pen. Downstairs, a clock she couldn't hear struck some hour, and the house settled. And somewhere in it, Yoon So-han slept in a room with the merger 3 weeks off, believing her plan intact. The girl paid and gone after Thursday, the housekeeper silent, the necklace safe in the family's hands. She didn't know the girl had a contract now. She didn't know the son had a recording. She didn't know the two of them had sat in a service parlor and drawn a line across her Thursday. Yvette set the notebook under her pillow, where it had never gone before. She'd always kept it in the apron, and lay down in her clothes with her hand flat on top of it through the fabric. Tomorrow at 6:45 she would walk into a room she'd only ever cleaned and read the family's paper as an equal, or as close to equal as a signature could make her. Tomorrow the manifests. Tomorrow she'd learn where the van went and why her uniform went with it. She almost slept, then her hand found the phone in her pocket, and she remembered the photograph, the log line, Han, in the hand that wasn't Sunhee's. And she looked at it in the dark one more time and thought, I know that handwriting. I've seen it in this house. She hadn't placed it yet, but she would. She placed everything, eventually. That was the job, and the job was the only thing in this house that had never once lied to her. She held the phone against her chest beside the notebook, 2 records now, and waited for 6:45. She was at the study door at 6:41, not 6:45. Min-jae was already inside, jacket off, sleeves folded once at the wrist. 3 boxes sat on the long table where the fusion papers usually spread. He'd cleared the papers. He'd made room. You're early, he said. So are you. He pushed the first box toward her. Delivery logs. The second, laundry manifests. The third, the service door schedule, and 4 months of the visitor register. She set her notebook beside them, opened it flat, and uncapped the pen he'd left on the table the night before. Rules, he said. You read. I don't touch the book. If you find something, you tell me what it is before you tell me what it means. That's my rule, she said. You're borrowing it. The corner of his mouth moved. He sat across from her and let her work. She started with the laundry manifests because that was where her own uniform had gone. 3 days a week the Han Laundry sent a van. Each run had a manifest. Item counts, garment codes, a signature at pickup and one at drop. She ran her finger down the first column. Sheets, towels, table linen, staff garments. The numbers matched, line for line. Then they didn't. Look at the counts, she said. He leaned in. They balance. The totals balance. The categories don't. She turned the page toward him. 14 out on Monday. 14 back Thursday. But Monday sent 6 garment bags and Thursday returned 4 garment bags and 2 hanging covers. A cover isn't a bag. Someone's counting them as the same thing to keep the total clean. Covers for what? Suits, coats, anything on a hanger. She kept her finger on the line. But these covers weigh more than a coat. The pickup weight's logged, right here. He read the figure. His jaw shifted. Coats don't weigh that. No, she said. They don't. She wrote it down. Not what it meant, just what it was. Covers logged as bags. Weight wrong for the contents named. She underlined the weight column and moved on. The delivery logs came next. She'd expected a mess. Instead, they were clean, which was worse, because clean meant maintained. Someone kept these. She matched the laundry van arrivals against the service door schedule and found the seam in 11 minutes. The van comes at times the door isn't staffed, she said. The door's always staffed. By a rotation, here's the rotation. She laid the schedule flat. 2 guards, alternating. Except 3 nights in the last month, the log shows the same name twice, 1 man covering both slots. And every one of those nights, the Han van came through. Min-jae stood. He came around to her side of the table and looked down at the columns with her. He smelled of the same cologne from the dinner, and she ignored it. Who's the doubled name? He said. Cho. She tapped it. But watch the handwriting. The sign-ins for the doubled shifts weren't in the same hand as Cho's other entries. The letters leaned the other way. She'd seen that lean before. She flipped to the back of her own notebook, to the photo she'd taken in the basement laundry, the entry log, the line where her old uniform's destination read Han in a stranger's script. She held the phone beside the schedule. "Same hand," she said. "Whoever wrote Han on my uniform wrote Cho into these shifts." Min-jae took the phone. He looked at it a long time. His thumb moved over the tattoo at his neck, the old tell, and stopped. "That's not a guard's job," he said. "Falsifying the door log. That's someone who moves through this house like they own the pen. Someone who does the paperwork," she said, "not the lifting." He set the phone down carefully, as if it might tip something over. "You're saying the necklace isn't the point?" "I'm saying the necklace is one line in a longer book." She turned back to the manifests. The covers were moving before the necklace ever left the safe. "Look at the dates. This has been running for months." He was quiet. Then, "Show me the driver." She found the driver in the delivery logs. Every Han laundry run named a driver in the pickup signature, except the runs that came on the unstaffed nights. Those were signed with initials only. JS's man, one of the linen women had called him once, in a hallway, not knowing Yvette heard. Yvette had written it down 8 weeks ago without knowing why. She found the page now. "The van on the wrong nights has a different driver," she said. "The staff call him JS's man. June sucks. You have that written. 8 weeks ago." She showed him the line, dated in her own hand. The ink faded a half shade from the rest. "I didn't know what it was. I wrote it because it was strange. That's the whole book. Strange things I couldn't place." He read the 8-week-old line and something in his face changed, not softened, sharpened. He was seeing the notebook for what it was. Not a maid's diary. A ledger no one had known to hide from. "Keep going," he said, and sat back down. She kept going. The visitor register was the last box and the thickest. 4 months of names, times in, times out. Most of it was ordinary. Caterers, the florist, the fusion lawyers in their gray suits. She read it the way she cleaned a room, corner to corner, missing nothing. On the 9th page she stopped. "The laundry driver signs the visitor register too," she said. "On the normal days." "So?" "So on the wrong nights he doesn't. He comes and goes and there's no visitor line. The service door log has the van. The visitor register doesn't have the man." She looked up. "He's a visitor when it's linen. He's nobody when it's covers." Min-jae's hands had gone still on the table. "They built 2 versions of the same night," she said. "One for the paper that gets checked. One for what actually happened." "Who checks the paper?" "Insurance, auditors, the fusion team." She said it slowly, because it was arriving as she said it. "Anyone who'd look after a theft. The clean version exists so that when someone looks, it holds." He stood again. This time, he walked to the window and looked down at the service door, the way she'd watched him do from her own window, a floor above without him knowing. The morning was gray at the glass. He didn't describe it and neither did she. The point was the door, and what came through it. "The necklace was never the crime," he said to the glass. "It's the alarm they wanted pulled." "Say that again?" He turned. "If the necklace goes missing and a maid takes the fall and the family settles it quietly, no police, no audit, everyone looking at you, then nobody looks at the van. Nobody weighs the covers. You're the noise. The van is the work." She wrote it down. What it was, first, theft staged loud, transport kept quiet. Then, in the margin, small, what it might mean, and she let herself write that part, because he'd said it first, and the book was a record of both their thinking now. "What's in the covers?" she said. "You tell me." "You found them." She went back through the manifest weights, the garment codes, the drop signatures. The covers went out heavier than they came back on some runs and lighter on others. Out heavy, back light. Something left the house in the covers and didn't return in them. "Documents," she said. "Or something flat and dense, cardstock, the weights wrong for cloth and right for paper in volume." "The fusion runs on paper," Min-jae said. "Authorizations, account transfers, signatory cards." He came back to the table. "If someone's moving fusion documents out through the laundry, past the house, before the merger closes, then the merger isn't being protected," she said. "It's being harvested." The word sat between them. He didn't reach for the tattoo this time. He put both hands flat on the table and looked at the 3 boxes as if they'd changed shape. You came in here about a necklace, he said. I came in here to stop being called a thief. You found a pipeline. She capped the pen. Her hand wasn't steady, and she let it not be steady. There was no one here to hide it from, and hiding it cost energy she needed. I found the shape of one, she said. I don't have what's inside the covers. I have weights and a handwriting, and a driver the staff gave a nickname. That's not proof. That's a direction. It's more than I had at midnight. It's more than I wanted. He looked at her then, and she made herself hold it, because looking away now would read as fear, and she'd spent the night deciding she was done performing anything for this family. You could have walked, he said. Last night, you could have taken the lawyer and the protection for your mother and read me exactly enough to keep your name clean and left the rest in the box. I thought about it. Why didn't you? She thought about the answer that was true and the answer that was safe, and gave him the true one, because the safe one wasn't in her this morning. Because they wrote my mother's clinic into a plan on a piece of paper somewhere, she said. A plan where I stop existing after Thursday. You don't walk away from people who put your mother on a timeline. You find out how long the timeline is. His face did something she hadn't seen it do. Not sympathy, she'd have refused sympathy. Recognition, as if she'd named the thing he'd been circling since he heard his fiancée's voice come through a dead phone line. Thursday, he said. Thursday's the fusion dinner. He didn't answer right away. He went back through the delivery logs himself, turning pages with 2 fingers, checking her work the way she'd known he would, because a man who ran what he ran didn't take a maid's arithmetic on faith. She let him, she wanted him to. A thing he'd verified himself was a thing he'd defend later without her in the room. You skipped nothing, he said finally. I clean corners. Corners are where the dirt hides. That a proverb. That's a job. He set the log down. There's a smell in here I've been chasing since I opened the 3rd box. He tapped the manifests. Not on the paper, on the runs themselves. Every unstaffed night, the van logs a cleaning solvent in the supply column. Same product. Every time. She pulled the supply column toward her. There it was. A code in Hangul stamped beside each wrong night run. The same code she'd read off a bottle in his own dressing room 3 days ago. The bottle that had wept amber down his dinner jacket, while a woman in ivory watched her save it. That solvent isn't sold to houses, Min-jae said. It's industrial. The Han textile plant buys it by the drum. It cleans machine oil off raw cloth before dyeing. It has no business in a laundry that does linen and suits. It has business if the covers carry something the plant made, she said, something they wanted stripped clean before it moved. Or after. His hand went flat on the table again. You strip a thing of what it touched so no one can say where it's been. She wrote the solvent down. Han plant solvent, unstaffed runs, not a household product. Under it, faint, she added the line she'd carried since the dressing room without a place to put it. Same solvent. My jacket incident. My discarded uniform. 3 days ago it had been a mystery in a bottle. Now it was a thread that ran from her own ruined sleeve to a van that came in the dark. My old uniform, she said slowly. The one Sun-hee pulled for stains. Amber, on the right cuff. I carried a box from your family's van 8 weeks ago, and something wept through the cardboard onto my wrist. I thought it was nothing. I wrote it down because I write everything. She looked up. It was this, the plant solvent. On my sleeve, from a box that shouldn't have been in this house. Min-jae went very still. And then someone sent that uniform to Han, she said. Not to be cleaned, to be gone, because it carried the one thing that proves the plant supplies moved through here, on the cuff of a woman nobody watches. The fibers, he said. If that uniform still exists, the solvent's still in the weave. That's not a nickname or a doubled shift or a weight that's off by a pound. That's a thing you can hold and test. That's the first piece of this that a lab could read out loud. Then it doesn't exist anymore. Maybe, she capped the pen, or maybe someone who moves things in covers, who never throws away what might be useful later, kept it exactly the way they kept these logs, clean, filed, in case. She held his eyes. The hand doesn't destroy. The hand archives. That's how I know it's not Junsuk. Junsuk would have burned my sleeve. Whoever's really running this keeps the sleeve, because a sleeve on someone else's wrist is a sleeve you can point at. He absorbed that. When he spoke, his voice had dropped. You're describing someone building a case against you while they run a theft under your name. I'm describing someone who does both with the same file cabinet. Thursdays when the covers stop. He said it like a man reading his own house for the first time. Whatever's moving, it finishes when the merger closes. After that, there's nothing to move. The reserves combined. The signatures are done. Anything they wanted out has to be out before the ink dries. And me out with it. And you out with it, he agreed. And there was no comfort in how easily he said it, which she preferred to comfort. A sound in the hall. Footsteps, unhurried, a woman's. Yvette closed the notebook over her hand without thinking, the way she'd learned to in 8 months of being invisible. Min-jae saw her do it and moved. Not fast, just enough, sliding the manifest box a few inches so his own body was between it and the door. The steps passed. Whoever it was didn't stop. The house exhaled. "We can't do this here," Yvette said quietly. "Not in the open. Not with the boxes on the table. No. And I can't be seen carrying these." She nodded at the paper. "A maid with the laundry logs. That's the story they already wrote for me. I hand them a picture that finishes the frame." He understood at once, which she noted. He was quick when it cost him something. "Then you don't carry them. You read them here, early, before the house wakes. And what you keep in the book, in your hand, where no one's allowed to search." "Clause 5, she said. "Clause 5. She opened the notebook again. On a fresh page, she wrote the date, the time, and 3 lines. Covers logged as bags, weight false. Door log falsified in the hand, van on unstaffed nights. Driver unlisted as visitor, called JS's man. She wrote them plainly, the way she'd write a stain report. Condition, evidence, no conclusion signed she couldn't defend. "You're not writing what it means," he observed. "I write what it means when I can prove it means that." She didn't look up. "Right now it means someone in this house keeps 2 sets of books, and one of them has my name in it. That I can prove." He watched the pen. "The lawyer," he said. "The one in Elmhurst. When he's retained. Today, you said retainer today. Today, he gets copies of nothing yet, but he gets a sealed letter, what you've found, dated, in your hand, held by counsel. So if something happens to you before Thursday, it doesn't die in this room." She stopped writing. It was, she understood, the first thing he'd offered that protected her instead of using her. She turned it over for what it might cost her and found the cost and decided the cost was acceptable. "A sealed letter," she said, "held by my lawyer. Opened only if. Then I write it twice. One for him, one stays with me." She met his eyes. "You don't get a copy. I didn't ask for one. You were about to." The mouth corner again. "I was about to." She bent back to the page, but her hand had gone still over a line in the manifest she'd read past twice. A garment code she'd seen before, 3 columns over, on a run from the week her own uniform disappeared. She pulled the earlier manifest from the box and set the 2 side by side. "What?" Min-jae said. She didn't answer yet. She matched the codes. The cover that went out heavy the week her uniform vanished carried a garment code that also appeared, that same week, on the drop that returned a hanging cover to the house. Same code, out and back, in a single week, but the weights didn't match either direction. Heavy out, heavy back. Something went in the cover, and something else came home in it. And on the return line, in the item field, in small letters someone had tried to make ordinary, 2 entries under 1 code. A duplicate. 2 things labeled as one. They double label, she said. Say it plain. 1 cover, 1 code, 2 items inside. She pressed her finger to the line so hard the paper dented. The manifest names 1. The weight carries 2. Whatever's in these covers, it comes wrapped as something the house already expects to see. A suit cover with a suit code, and a second thing riding under the same label, so the count never changes and the eye slides off. Min-jae came around the table and crouched beside her chair to read it at her level. Up close she could see the line of the tattoo where it left his collar, and she kept her eyes on the paper, because the paper was the point. A cover can carry a cover, he said slowly. A garment bag inside a garment bag, labeled once. So you'd have to open it to know. And nobody opens the family's laundry. Nobody's allowed to. He stood. He was breathing like a man who'd climbed something. You know what that means. If a thing can ride into this house under a false label, in a cover no one opens, then a thing can ride out the same way. She finished it because she'd gotten there a half-second ahead of him, and she was done letting this family finish her sentences for her. The necklace didn't have to be carried out by a person at all. It could have left in a cover, 3 days before anyone knew it was gone. The room went very quiet. She heard herself say it and heard how far it reached. If the necklace could travel in a cover, then the necklace in her closet, the one Min Jae had lifted from under her cardigan with his own hand, didn't have to be the necklace at all. It only had to be a thing shaped like it, delivered in a cover no one opened, timed to a night a false name signed the door. She didn't say that last part. It was too big, and she had no weight for it, and it was one turn past what the paper could hold. She wrote instead, in the margin, small enough to deny, check what came in the covers the week before the safe. Then she closed the book on the pen. You went pale, Min Jae said. I'm allowed. What did you see? A direction, she said. Same as before. I'll write it when I can carry it. He didn't push. She noted that too, that he'd learned already that pushing her closed the book and waiting opened it. He straightened, went to the boxes, and began stacking them, lids on, the way they'd come. 6:50, he said. The kitchen's up in 10 minutes. You go first. I'll move these back before my mother's tray goes up. She gathered the notebook and the phone. At the door she stopped, because there was one more thing, and it belonged to her, not to the paper. When you retain the lawyer, she said, I want him to know one name, not in the letter, to his face. So a person outside this house knows to look for it if I go quiet. Whose name? The hand, she said. Whoever writes ASAN like that. Whoever put Cho on the door twice. I don't know the face yet, but when I do, that's the name that goes in his ear first. Not Yoon-so, not Jun-suk, the hand. Min Jae set the last lid down and looked at her across the boxes. You think it's not either of them? I think it's someone who never has to lift anything, she said. Someone the guards don't question, and the drivers answer to, and the paper obeys. Yoon-so gives orders. Jun-suk carries them. But somebody keeps the books that make it all disappear. That's the hand. That's who I want a stranger watching for. For a moment he didn't move. Then he did the thing he'd done at the dinner without meaning to. He looked at her like she was a person and not a fixture, and this time he seemed to know he was doing it, and to let it happen anyway. 6:50, he said again, softer. Go. She went. Up the back stairs, notebook against her chest, past the linen room where the day shift was pulling towels, into the attic corridor where her closet stood third from the end with its door still slightly off its track from the night they'd opened it. She didn't look at the closet. She went to her room and knelt by the bed and slid the notebook under the pillow, and then she sat back on her heels and let her hands shake for exactly as long as she'd allow, counting to 20, the way she counted stains dry. At 20 she stopped. She'd come into this house 8 months ago carrying nothing but a caddy and a plan to keep her mother walking. She'd written down strange things because writing them down was the only power a woman in a gray dress had in a house that looked through her. And the strange things had turned into a shape, and the shape had a hand behind it, and the hand had written her mother onto a timeline that ended Thursday. 4 days. She pulled the phone from her apron and opened the photo of the basement log one more time. Han, in that leaning script, deciding where her old uniform went. She'd told Min Jae she'd seen the hand somewhere in the house before. She still couldn't place it, but she would. She cleaned every room on this floor and half the rooms below. She'd stood behind every one of them pouring wine. Somewhere she'd watched that hand hold a pen and thought nothing of it, because a maid isn't supposed to read what the family writes. She'd been reading the whole time. Downstairs a door opened and closed, and the van, she knew the engine now, she'd learned it from her window in the dark, turned over in the service court and idled. Yvette stood, crossed to the small window under the eave, and looked down. The Han laundry van sat by the service door in the gray morning, tailgate up, and a man she didn't know was loading it. Hanging covers, 3 of them. He laid them flat in the back, careful, the way you carry something that isn't only cloth. She counted them. 3. She reached for the notebook under the pillow, uncapped the pen, and wrote the time, and the count, and one word, She let herself keep uncrossed this time, because the paper could finally hold it. Again. The phone buzzed against her chest before the van's taillights had cleared the gate. Yvette read the screen twice. A number she didn't know. A voicemail already waiting, left while she watched 3 covers carried out the service door. She pressed it to her ear and sat up on the narrow bed. Her mother's voice, thin at the edges, the way it got when the left side pulled at her words. Baby, some people came to the clinic today. 2 of them. Suits. They asked the front desk about my account. Whether it was really paid, whether the money was clean. A pause, breath dragging. The girl at the desk looked at me different after. Call me when you can. I'm fine. I'm fine, Yvette. She wasn't fine. Yvette knew the difference between her mother fine and her mother saying it. She checked the time. 10 past midnight. The clinic in Elmhurst closed at 8. Whoever came had come during hours, in front of staff, in front of the other patients in the waiting room with their walkers and their crossword books. Not to ask. To be seen asking. She called back. It rang out, she called again. Evelyn picked up on the 4th ring, and her voice was smaller now, further from the phone, as though she'd set it on the kitchen table and was speaking down at it. You should be sleeping, Evelyn said. Who came, Mama? Names. They didn't leave names. One did most of the talking, the other one just wrote things down. A cup touched a saucer. He had gloves on. Inside. Who wears gloves inside? Yvette's hand went still on the notebook. Junsok wore gloves. Junsok had worn gloves at the safe, at the closet, in every room Yvette had shared air with him. The man who wrote things down while another talked. What did they write? She asked. I don't know. My whole file, seemed like. They talked to the billing lady a long time. After they left, she asked me, real gentle, if there was any trouble with my payment source. Any trouble. A wet sound, swallowed. Baby, is my money dirty? Did you? No. Fast. Too fast. She heard herself and slowed it. No, Mama. Your money is clean. Your money is the cleanest money in that whole building. The condition. Clause 3. In her own hand, in the notebook under her palm right now. Evelyn Cole protected. Clinic untouched. 0 contact. Min Jae had repeated it out loud. She had made him repeat it. He had signed it and added a line of his own about carrying the blame himself. And 2 men had walked into the Elmhurst clinic today and touched the one thing he had signed his name against. Go to bed, Mama. Take your pill. I'll call at 7. You sound like your father when you do that voice. Bed, Mama. She ended the call and sat with the phone dark in her lap. The attic ticked around her, the house settling into its own weight. She wanted to believe it was Yoon-so alone, freelancing, running her own errand outside the plan. But Junsok didn't move without a script. He wrote things down. He was the pen, and someone dictated. She opened the notebook. She wrote the time of the call, the words 2 suits, gloves inside. Billing asked if the money was dirty. She underlined dirty. Then she stopped, because the next thing to write was the question she couldn't answer yet, and she had learned this week not to write questions she couldn't close. Instead, she went down. She took the back stairs in her stocking feet, notebook against her ribs inside the cardigan, and she did not go to Min Jae's study. She went to the service kitchen, because that was where the house phone log lived, the little spiral pad by the wall unit where every incoming and outgoing call to the mansion's old system got a time and a scrawl. If 2 men had left the property today to visit a clinic in Elmhurst, the car log at the gatehouse would show it. And the gatehouse fed a duplicate to the kitchen pad, because Sun-hee kept it that way, because Sun-hee kept everything twice. The kitchen was dark and cold, the ranges off, 1 bulb over the sink throwing a coin of light. Yvette turned the pad toward it and ran her finger down the day. The car log was there. A town car out at 10:40, back at 1:15, destination column, a dash, blank, but the mileage was noted, because insurance made them note mileage, and she did the arithmetic in her head. Round trip to Elmhurst and back sat almost exactly on that number. She turned the page back, and back again. 4 months of blanks in that destination column, all of them, every trip a dash, and she'd never looked, because it had never touched her before. Then the door to the servants' hall opened and Sun-hee stood in it, in a robe, gray at the roots, chain of keys gone from her waist for the first time Yvette had ever seen. You shouldn't be down here, Sun-hee whispered, not a threat, a plea. Neither should you. You're suspended from the floor. I heard someone. I thought it was. She stopped. Her eyes went to the pad under Yvette's hand, and then away, fast, and that flinch was its own answer. Yvette kept her voice low and level. A car went to Elmhurst today, to my mother's clinic. Who signed it out? Sunhee's mouth worked. The keys weren't at her waist to hold, so her hands held each other. I can't. You already did once. You told me you knew what was in my closet before you turned the key. You've got a grandson. I remember all of it. Yvette set 2 fingers on the pad. This isn't a name I'm asking for. It's a car. Who signed the car? Yvette. Sunhee's whisper cracked. I made you tea last night. You made me tea. Nobody in this house has made me anything in 30 years. Her hands tightened on each other. I am telling you to go up those stairs and lie down and let the morning come. And I am telling you because I am the only one in this house who would rather you didn't get hurt. Then help me not get hurt. Yvette kept her hand on the pad. The car. The older woman looked at the coin of light on the sink, as though it might rise and speak for her. When she answered, it came out flat, drained, the voice of someone reading a sentence already past. The car doesn't get signed out by the person who takes it. Her throat moved. It gets released. Somebody has to release the car for a family errand off the ledger. Only the house head releases a car off the ledger. The house head. Not Min-jae. Min-jae ran the accounts, the merger, the safe. But the house, the cars, the staff, the doors, the old system that fed the kitchen pad. The house answered to one person and had answered to her for 30 years. Hye-suk. Yvette felt it land somewhere below her ribs, cold and clean, like the first swallow of ice water on an empty stomach. Say it, she said. I've said what I can. Sunhee stepped back into the dark of the hall. Don't chase this one up the stairs, Yvette. This one bites back higher than you can reach. And she was gone, robe whispering, up toward the rooms where the coerced and the kept both waited out the same long week. Yvette stood alone in the coin of light with 4 months of blank destinations under her fingers, and did not move for a moment. Then she tore nothing out. She copied. Time, mileage, the dash where a name should be, and one line she made herself write in full this time. House head releases the car. She dated it. She closed the book. She meant to go straight back up. She got as far as the foot of the main stairs. Light under the study door. Not Min-jae's study on the 2nd floor, the other one. Hye-suk's. Off the main landing, where the merger papers had lived until yesterday, where a daughter of the house could stand at the door and hear 2 voices if the old house carried them, and the old house always carried them. She should have gone up. She knew, even taking the first stair, that she was breaking her own rule, walking toward a room instead of away from a danger. She took the 2nd stair anyway. The voices were low. Hye-suk's, dry and even. The voice that had said absorbs the Han accounts in 3 weeks at a dinner table, like she was reading a weather report. And a man's, not Jun-suk, deeper, rougher at the bottom. Min-jae. Yvette stopped 3 steps below the landing, in the dark, one hand flat on the cold wall, and made herself breathe through her mouth so the house wouldn't hear her. Handled, Hye-suk was saying. The clinic was a message, nothing more. A woman like that, she'll take the message and take her daughter home to it. You sent them to Elmhurst. Min-jae's voice had a stone in it. After I told you the girl is under my protection. In writing. Your protection. A soft sound that in a kinder woman might have been a laugh. You put your name on paper for a housemaid. Do you understand what you've done, or do I have to? What I understand, Min-jae said, is that you released a car off the ledger today, the way you released the safe. Silence. The house held it. On the 3rd stair, Yvette's hand pressed flatter against the wall until she felt her own pulse in it. The way you released the safe. Not the way a thief cracked it. Released. He knew. He was saying it out loud, to his mother, and he was not saying it like a discovery. He was saying it like a thing he had known. You've suspected for a week, Hye-suk said, and it was not a question, and something in her tone had turned almost gentle, the gentleness of the winning side. You knew the combination was 3, not 2. You knew the last opened log would name me, and you sat on it. You sat on it exactly as long as it suited you, my son, so don't stand in my house and play the honest one. I sat on it, Min-jae said, slow, to find out who you were doing it for. You sat on it, she answered, because the girl's little book was worth more to you kept than spent. Same as me. We are not so different, you and I. We both found a use for her before we found a conscience. Yvette did not feel her knees give. She felt her hand come off the wall. That was all. The small loss of that one point of contact, cold plaster leaving her palm, and the dark of the stairwell tilting a half-inch. He knew about the safe. He had known his mother's fingers were the ones that let the door swing. He had known it while she wrote her 6 conditions into the notebook, while he put the pen in her hand, while he added, "And if this goes wrong, it goes wrong on me," not on her mother, in a script she had trusted enough to date. He had known it when he played the recording twice and let her believe the whole shape of the thing was Yoon-so's voice and Jun-suk's gloves. He had let her build her fortress out of 6 clauses on 2 pages, and he had known the foundation was his own mother, and he had kept it back, the way you keep back a card, the way you keep back anything you might still need to win. We both found a use for her. She had marked it in the margin days ago and crossed it out. He used my name. She had turned it into a question about whether he saw a person or an asset. Hae-suk had just answered the question, in the dark, without knowing anyone was listening, and the answer was in the book the whole time. Yvette went up the stairs before she had decided to. Not away. Up. Onto the landing, into the seam of light, and she pushed the study door open with the flat of her hand. The two of them turned. Hae-suk stood by the cold hearth in a dark structured jacket, straight as a rule, and her face did the smallest thing, a tightening at the eyes, gone before it finished. Min-jae was at the long table, sleeves back, and when he saw who it was, the stone went out of his voice and something worse came into it. Yvette. How long? She said. He came around the table. She lifted one hand and he stopped. How long did you know your mother opened that safe? She said. Days. Say the number. It's not. Days. Her voice did not rise. That was the thing she would remember later, that it never once rose. You knew the night you played me the recording. You knew when you told me the combination was 2 people and then went and tested her on it yourself. You knew when I wrote my mother's name into that book and made you say it out loud. She was very still. You let me build a house on your mother, and you kept the key in your pocket. I kept it, he said, because the second she knew I knew, she'd move faster. Against you. I was protecting. Don't. One word. Quiet. And it stopped him cleaner than a shout. Don't say the last word. Hae-suk's voice came smooth from the hearth. You see, she said, to her son, but for Yvette. She understands men better than you do. She knows the difference between being saved and being spent. Yvette turned to her. For a long moment she looked at the older woman, at the brooches, at the family ring, at the rigid aristocratic line of a spine that had never once bent to serve a tray. 2 men went to my mother's clinic today, Yvette said, in front of the whole waiting room, to make the billing desk ask a 60-year-old stroke patient if her money was dirty. She took 1 step. You released that car. I keep the house, Hae-suk said, as if that were an answer, and it was. There's a clinic in Elmhurst full of people who worked their whole lives for less than what's on your wrist, Yvette said, and you drove a message to it in a town car because a maid wrote things down. She let the silence sit. You'll lose. You don't know it yet. But I've seen how you keep a house. Everything twice. Blank where a name should go. People who write things down live longer than people who send cars. Something crossed Hae-suk's face then. Not fear. She was too old and too high for fear. But calculation. The fast recount of a woman who had just heard the ledger read back to her in a stranger's voice. Min-jae said her name again. Yvette, the dinner's moved. It's not Thursday anymore. They've pulled it in. I need you to. You need me. Yvette looked at him, and the notebook was against her ribs, and she held it there with one arm, the way you hold a thing that is yours. You've all needed me. That's the only reason any door in this house ever opened for me. She stepped back into the doorway. I'm done being needed by people who won't be honest with me. If you walk out that gate tonight, Hae-suk said, mild, certain, you walk out a thief. That's the story that's already written. The maid who took the necklace and ran. My son put his name to a private arrangement that makes it look kind. Cross the threshold without us and there's no kind version left. Only the maid who ran. It was true. Yvette knew it was true. The mercy Minjay had built, I gave her the necklace to keep, held together only inside the house, only while she stayed inside the story they were telling. The moment she left, she was the one who took it and ran, and her mother's clinic was already asking about dirty money, and there would be no lawyer's letter fast enough to catch a story with a day's head start. She stood in the door and felt the whole trap of it close. Every wall she'd papered with conditions. Every clause she'd made him say out loud. All of it worth exactly as much as the honesty underneath it, which was none. Yvette, Minjay's voice, and for the first time all week it had nothing left in it to bargain with. The recording, the manifests, the whole thing falls apart if you're not. Then it falls apart. She said it and she meant it, and the meaning of it opened a floor under her, because it meant her mother's 12 weeks and the 800 a month and the 412 behind the mirror and the gold paper chocolates she still hadn't bought. It meant all of that fell too. She had walked in 8 months ago with a plan and a notebook and a mother to keep alive, and she was about to walk out with the notebook and nothing else, into a story that had already decided she was a thief. She turned before either of them could see her face finish the thought. She went up the back stairs fast, not caring now who heard, and into the attic room, and she pulled the notebook out and set it on the bed and stood over it breathing. She had a decision to make, and 11 minutes to make it in, because if she was leaving before the house woke and the story hardened. She could stay and be needed and be spent, and keep her mother's money clean by staying inside the arrangement, and hate the taste of it every hour until Thursday that wasn't Thursday anymore. Or she could go and be the maid who ran, and lose the protection and the lawyer and the retainer paid today, and keep the one thing none of them had ever managed to take, which was that she wrote things down and the things she wrote were true. She looked at the book, 8 months of it, the smoking, the solvent, the line that said HAN, in a hand she now knew belonged to the house head. Cho doubled on the door. JS's man. The covers with 2 labels. The car to Elmhurst with a dash where the name should be. Every true thing, in her hand, dated. Her father had died in a hospital that cost more than her family had, and she had been 13, and she had learned that year that the people with the money decide which version of you survives. She had promised herself, over the box they buried him in, that she would never again stand in a room and let someone richer write her story for her. She had kept that promise for 16 years by writing everything down herself. She was not going to break it tonight, because a woman by a hearth told her the story was already printed. She had made a copy once, the sealed letter, in duplicate, with the lawyer in Elmhurst. Opened only if something happened to her before Thursday. She had written it thinking of the danger inside the house. She had not thought, when she wrote it, that the thing that would happen to her before Thursday was that she would choose to walk. Yvette picked up the pen. She did not write a question. She wrote a plan, in short lines, the way she wrote a stain, condition, treatment, result. Then she took the 412, no, that was behind the mirror across the city, in the rented room, and she was here, and she had nothing here but the book and the phone and a cardigan. She dressed. Sapatilhas, the gray dress, no apron. She left the apron folded on the bed, white and structured and empty, because whatever she was walking into, she was not walking into it as their maid. She put the notebook inside the dress, against her skin this time, not the pocket, not the pillow. She put the phone in her hand. At the top of the back stairs, she stopped and made herself count to 20, and this time she let her hands shake the whole way through it and did not stop them at 10. She let them shake. Then they steadied on their own, and she went down. The service door was where it had always been. The latch was the kind she could open from inside. She'd learned that the first night, trapped in the laundry, and the house had taught her its own way out without meaning to. She had her hand on the latch when the phone lit in her palm. Elmhurst Clinic. Not her mother's cell. The clinic's main line, at midnight, when the clinic had been closed for 4 hours. She stared at it. Nobody good called from a closed clinic's main line in the middle of the night. She pressed it to her ear and said nothing, waiting, the latch cold under her other hand and the dark yard beyond the glass, and the gatehouse light steady down the drive. A woman's voice, clear, unhurried, pleased with itself in a way that raised the hair on Yvette's arms because she had heard exactly this tone once before, in a laundry, telling Junsuk the sequence. "Yvette Cole," Yunso said, "you're up late." "So am I. So is your mother, as it happens." A pause, shaped for her. "She's had a difficult evening. Somebody had to drive her home from the clinic. Wasn't that kind of us?" Yvette's hand came off the latch. "Where is she?" "Home. Safe." For now, those two words still go together. The smile was audible. "Come to the dinner, Yvette. It's tomorrow now, not Thursday. Didn't he tell you? Come stand where I can see you, and be a good quiet girl about that little book of yours, and your mother finishes all 12 of her weeks. Walk out that gate tonight instead." The pause again, precise as a scalpel. "And I promise you, the story that's already written about the maid who ran will be the kindest thing anyone ever says about your family again." The line went dead. Yvette stood at the service door with the phone against her ear and the dead air in it, and the latch cold at her hip, and the yard black beyond the glass, and her mother's voice from an hour ago saying, "I'm fine, I'm fine," and behind her the whole sleeping house that had used her every single day she'd lived in it, and ahead of her, a gate she could not now walk through without walking straight into what waited on the other side of it. She looked down at the phone, she looked at the latch. She thumbed the screen back to life, and with her hand not quite steady, she opened it not to her mother's number, and not to Minjae's, but to the one number she had made him pay for, and sworn to use only when there was no version of the night left that she could win alone. The lawyer, in Elmhurst, 9 minutes from the clinic, awake or not, retained today, holding a sealed letter meant to be opened only if. Her thumb hovered over the call. Somewhere above her, in the house, a door opened, and footsteps started down. The footsteps belonged to Min Jae. He came down without his jacket, sleeves pushed up, and stopped 3 stairs from the bottom when he saw her hand on the phone and the lawyer's number lit on the screen. "Don't leave through that door," he said. "Give me one reason that isn't a threat. Because the necklace in the safe isn't the necklace." Her thumb came off the call. She turned. He came the rest of the way down, slow, palms open, the way a man crosses toward something that might bolt. "Say that again." "The one I pulled out of your closet, the one my mother handed the insurer. It's a copy." He held up his own phone, the screen already open to a photograph. "I had it looked at tonight, while you were upstairs deciding to walk." She stepped back into the hall so the service door swung shut behind her, sealing the cold out. "By who?" "A jeweler my father trusted. I drove it to him myself, in a laundry cover, because that seemed like the only thing in this house that travels without being opened." He almost smiled at that. It didn't hold. Yvette looked at the picture, 2 photographs, side by side. The same onyx lattice, the same antique gold. Under magnification, one clasp carried a maker's stamp worn soft with age. The other clasp was too crisp. New metal pretending to be old. "The stones are glass," he said. "Good glass. Good enough to survive a claim, an appraisal. A family that would never look twice at a thing they already believe they own." She studied the 2 clasps in the photo. The jeweler had photographed them under the same lamp, from the same angle, so the difference had nowhere to hide. The old stamp had the softness of a thing rubbed by 50 years of thumbs. The new one had edges. How sure was he, she said. Sure enough to put it in writing. He wouldn't sign a valuation on the copy. Said his name doesn't go near a lie. Minjae's thumb moved across the screen. He's the same man who set the original for my grandfather. He knew it the second he held the weight. Glass rings different than stone against the teeth. You bit it. He did. Then he handed it to me and made me do it too, so I'd stop hoping. Then where is the real one? That's the part I brought you down to hear. She noticed her own breathing then, faster than her mind. She slowed it on purpose. The notebook was still against her skin, warm through the dress. She took it out. She did not open it yet. The margin, she said. I wrote a line in the margin 2 nights ago. Check what came in the covers the week before the safe. Read it to me. She opened to the page, her own writing, small, boxed. The week before anyone reported it gone, 3 hanging covers came through the Han laundry with double labels. 1 code, 2 items by weight. 4. She looked up. The copy came in the week before. It was already here, waiting, before the theft was a theft. And the real one went out, Min-jae said, the same way. Flat, dense, under a label nobody in this house opens. Why? She said it the way she'd said it all week. The flat way. The way that meant, tell me what it is before you tell me what it means. A collector's piece walks out in a garment bag. So what? Insurance pays. The family eats the loss. That's not worth a year of doubled logs and a driver with initials. Min-jae reached past her, not touching her, and turned the deadbolt so the door couldn't be opened from outside while they stood there. Then he leaned on the wall and told her. The clasp opens, he said. Both clasps. The real one has a hollow inside the gold, behind the largest stone. My father put things there he didn't trust to a bank. A habit from before the family was clean. He watched her take it. There's a key inside, not metal, a cryptographic key, a string of characters etched on a strip thin as foil, rolled inside the clasp. A key to what? To the reserve. He let the words sit. When the merger closes, the Han accounts fold into ours. There's a holding reserve that sits open for 72 hours during the transfer. Cash that belongs to neither company yet, sitting in a bridge account, waiting for both signatures. Whoever holds that key and the merger authorization together can move the reserve once, cleanly, in the window, and the transfer log will read it as an internal settlement. Not a theft, a line item. Yvette's hand went still on the notebook. How much? Enough that no one at this dinner ever works again. Enough to leave the country and never send a postcard. And the dinner was moved up. 48 hours. Yesterday it was Thursday. Tonight my mother told the board it's tomorrow. She said it was scheduling. His jaw worked. It's the window. They pulled the window forward so the reserve opens while everyone's still smiling over the fish course. The authorization gets signed at the table. The key's already out of the house. By the time the bridge account settles, whoever runs it is gone, and I'm a man who lost his family's money to his own bookkeeping. Yvette turned that over. The pieces she'd carried for a week clicked one against the next, and each click made the next sit flush. That's why the covers weighed wrong, she said. It wasn't only documents, it was rehearsal. They moved denser and denser things under a label nobody opens, until they were sure a necklace could ride the same road and come home a fake. They tested the pipe before they used it. And Cho on 2 shifts wasn't muscle. It was a gap. Someone who'd signed the door and not the truth. On the exact nights the van came for the fittings. She heard her own voice pick up speed and reined it. The whole thing was one long dress rehearsal for a single dinner. For tonight's. Now tomorrow's. Yoon So-wa, Yvette said. Yoon So-wa holds the key. Jun Sok moves the money. My mother opened the safe and looked the other way, because On-so promised her the merger would still close, still bury the Han debt, still make the family whole on paper. My mother thought she was protecting the house. She handed it the knife. Yvette closed the notebook over her thumb. And you knew she opened the safe. You knew a week ago. You let me write conditions with a pen you handed me, and you didn't tell me the one thing that would have told me who I was fighting. Yes. Say the rest of it. I told myself you were the only one who documented it, that if I said my mother's name out loud too soon, you'd walk, and I'd lose the record and the reserve and her, all at once. He pushed off the wall. I was protecting an asset. You? Then somewhere this week I stopped being able to tell the difference between protecting the record and protecting you, and I hated that, because it meant I could lose. She looked at him for a long moment. Above them the house held its breath. Dark landings, sleeping doors. That's not an apology, she said. No, it's the truth, and you told me once you'd rather have that. She turned the phone over in her hand. The lawyer's number still glowed. She thought of her mother, driven home from a clinic in the dark by strangers in gloves. She thought of a man who died in a hospital that cost more than he'd ever made, when she was 13, and the promise she'd made to a bathroom mirror after the funeral. Never let someone with more money write the ending. She pressed call. The lawyer answered on the second ring. Awake. A man paid to be awake. Yvette gave him 3 sentences. The sealed letter, open now, tonight, in front of a witness of his choosing. Her mother, moved from the clinic without consent, to be documented, and put under a protective eye by morning. And 1 instruction, spoken slow so he'd write it exactly. At the merger dinner tomorrow, she would appear as a witness, invited or not, and she wanted him in the car outside, with the letter and a copy of the contract written in her own hand. She hung up. Min-jae was watching her, the way he'd watched the safe. "You're going to the dinner," he said. "You're going to sit me at the table. They'll say the maid who stole came back to grovel." "Let them write that sentence," Yvette said. "I've spent 8 months writing a longer one." She barely slept. She read the notebook front to back at the attic desk, not to memorize it. She knew it the way she knew her mother's phone number, but to decide the order. A ledger read out of order is noise. Read in order, it becomes a road, and a road takes a listener somewhere they can't step off. She flagged the pages with slips of paper cut from a laundry manifest, one small cruelty she allowed herself. She called the lawyer twice. She called Evelyn once, at 7, as promised, and said only that Monday still stood, and the chocolates were bought. The dining room the next evening held 16. Yvette had counted them from the pantry doorway before she stepped in. Board members, lawyers, 2 Han cousins, the merger's underwriters, Hae-suk at the head in structured black and olive, Yoon-so at Min-jae's right in ivory tweed, Jun-suk 2 seats down in metal gray with his gloves folded beside his plate like a napkin he intended to use. She wore the gray dress, no apron. The notebook was in her hands, in the open, where everyone could see a servant carrying the wrong kind of book into a room she'd been accused of robbing. Hae-suk saw her first. The old woman's spoon paused a fraction of a second, then continued to her mouth. "This is a family matter," she said to the table, pleasant, "and our staff are not." "I'm not staff tonight," Yvette said. "I'm the witness your family tried to make disappear before Thursday." The word Thursday moved down the table like a draft. Yoon-so set down her wine. Jun-suk's hand drifted to the gloves. Min-jae stood. She stays. She talks. Anyone who wants to leave before she finishes can explain to the underwriters why. The underwriters stayed in their chairs. They had come to sign, and money makes people patient. A board member cleared his throat, the way men do when they'd like someone else to end an embarrassment for them. Nobody obliged him. The 2 Han cousins looked at Jun-suk and found no instruction in his face. Yoon-so smiled at the table, as if a servant reciting grievances were a small weather that would pass. The smile was the tell. It was too smooth for a woman being robbed of a merger, and Yvette had learned this week to read the smooth things in this house as the most dangerous. Yvette opened the notebook to the first flagged page. She did not read like a woman pleading. She read like a woman reading back a receipt. 8 weeks ago, I carried a box off the Han laundry van and stained the cuff of my uniform with a solvent that smelled of machine oil. I logged it. 3 days before the necklace was reported gone, that uniform was pulled from the wash for stains and sent, in a hand that isn't the housekeeper's, to a destination the log records only as Han. She turned the page. The same hand signed a guard named Cho into 2 shifts on 3 nights last month. On each of those 3 nights, the Han laundry van came to the service door in hours with no staff. On each of those nights, the van's manifest carried an industrial solvent bought by the drum for a textile factory, a solvent with no use in a house that launders linen and suits. The same solvent that was spilled on Mr. Kang's dinner jacket the week the theft began. "Speculation," Jun-suk said. "A cleaning girl's diary. The manifests aren't a diary." Yvette laid a photograph on the table. The log line, the HEAN entry, the crooked hand. Garment bags leave as garment bags and come back counted as hanging covers, so the totals stay clean, but the covers weigh too much for a coat. 1 code, 2 items inside. Something rides in under the label this house is trained not to open. She looked up at Yoon-so. 3 of those covers came through the week before the safe was ever touched. 1 of them carried the copy in, 1 of them carried the real necklace out. Yoon-so laughed, light, practiced. "You're describing a robbery you committed. The necklace was in your closet. Park Sun-hee saw you." The pantry door opened. Sun-hee stepped in her own clothes, no keys at her hip, her hands folded to keep them from shaking. "I never saw her," Sun-hee said. Her voice cracked and steadied. "I was told what would be in the 3rd closet before I turned the key. I was told to swear I saw her at the mirror 2 nights before. I did what I was told because a man came to me and said my grandson's name and then said no one would get hurt. We were only moving a box." She made herself look at the man. "You said it. You, Mr. Han, in the laundry corridor, with your gloves on." Jun-suk's mouth opened. Nothing came that helped him. His hand found the folded gloves and stopped there, and every underwriter at the table watched a man reach for gloves at a dinner, as if the leather could put the words back. "She's confused," he said finally. "The woman's terrified for her job." "I quit her job an hour ago, son," he said. "I'm not confused. I'm 52, and I've been afraid since the night you said my grandson's name in a hallway. I'm done being afraid at your convenience." "That's the pronoun I couldn't finish," Yvette said quietly, to no one and to the whole room. He said. "Now it has a name." Heesuk's hand pressed flat on the tablecloth. "This is enough. Whatever was done, it was done to protect this family from a debt that would have—" "You opened the safe," Min-jae said. The room turned to him. He had a phone in his hand now, and he set it in the center of the table, screen up, and pressed play. Yoon-so's voice came out of it, thin and clear over the ambient hiss of an old house line left open. "The third, under the cardigan, and make Park swear she saw the girl at the mirror. After Thursday she's gone and it never happened." No one breathed. Yoon-so's face did the arithmetic of a person realizing which morning that was. "You recorded." "You didn't silence the call," Min-jae said. "It rolled to the ambient line the morning the safe was found open. I've had it since before the search. I let the search happen because if I'd played it that morning, you'd have moved the dinner even sooner, and I wouldn't have had this." He nodded at the notebook in Yvette's hands. "The book that turns your voice into a case." Joon-sok stood, gloves in his fist. "None of this touches the accounts. There is no money missing. Nothing has been taken. You have a diary and a bad phone call." "Not yet," Min-jae said. "The reserve opens tonight. That's why the dinner moved." He looked at the underwriters. "There's a bridge account that goes live during the transfer. My brother-in-law-to-be intends to empty it in the window using a key that's been out of this house for a week, and an authorization he wants signed at this table before dessert." "A key," an underwriter repeated. Min-jae reached into his jacket and set a small object on the tablecloth beside the phone. The copy's clasp, prized open, empty. "This is the necklace my mother handed your appraiser. The clasp is hollow. It's supposed to hold a key. It's empty, because this is the fake, and the fake never had one." He turned to Yoon-so, "which means the real one is where the key is. On you. Tonight. Because you can't move the reserve without it in the room when the authorization signs." For 1 second, Yoon-so's hand moved toward the small ivory clutch beside her plate. It was the smallest motion in the room, and it was the loudest. Every board member saw it. She stopped herself half an inch too late. "Open it," Hae-suk said. Her own voice, gone cold, turned on the woman she'd protected. "Open the bag, Yoon-so." "I don't answer to servants and recordings." "Then answer to them," Min-jae said, and gestured at the underwriters, who were already standing, because money makes people patient right up until the second it makes them fast. Yoon-so did not open the bag. Joon-sok reached for it instead, to take it, to walk, and Min-jae's hand closed on his wrist, the way it had once closed on Yvette's, that first night, over a cuff. "Sit down," Min-jae said, "or the next call I make isn't to an appraiser." Joon-sok sat. The clutch stayed on the table. One of the underwriters, a woman with reading glasses and no patience left, drew it toward her, opened it, and lifted out the onyx lattice, the real one, the clasp worn soft and true, and turned it in the light until the tiny hinge gave, and a strip of foil, no wider than a thread, rolled loose onto the white cloth. The room looked at a ribbon of etched characters worth more than the house. For a moment, no one spoke. The underwriter with the reading glasses laid the foil flat on the tablecloth and smoothed it with one finger, the way a person handles a thing they have only read about in clauses. Then she looked up at Yoon-so, and her voice was the driest in the room. "You carried the transfer key into a signing dinner," she said, "in your handbag. That's not. There is no reading of that which is innocent." The underwriter set her pen down, closed, final. "My firm doesn't sign into a transaction with an open key at the table. We came to underwrite a merger. We will not underwrite a theft." "The merger is finished," Min-jae said to the table, and he said it to his mother most of all. "Not postponed. Finished tonight. The Han accounts don't fold into ours. The bridge account never opens, because there's no signature. And this," he touched the recording, the notebook, The empty clasp, goes to council in the morning, all of it, with her name on none of it except as the person who caught you. Hae-suk rose. For a moment the aristocratic spine held. Then she looked at her son and understood there was no version of the night where she remained the head of anything. I did it for the family, she said. You'll answer to the family, Min-jae said. You're done running this house. You'll keep your name because I won't let them take the last thing from you. You'll keep nothing else. He turned to Yvette. He did it in front of all 16 of them, which she understood was the point. Yvette Cole took nothing from this house, he said. She was set up by the people at this table who are still wearing gloves. She's not a thief. She was the only honest ledger in a house full of forged ones. Anyone who repeats otherwise repeats a lie, and I'll spend Kang money making sure it costs them. Yoon-so's ring caught the light as her hands curled on the tablecloth. You'd burn a merger for a maid. I'd burn it for the truth, Min-jae said. The maid I'm keeping for other reasons. Yvette closed the notebook. She looked at Yoon-so, at Jun-suk's bare now hands, at Hae-suk standing at the head of a table that was no longer hers, and she felt none of the things she'd braced for. No triumph, just the quiet of a debt finally on the correct side of the ledger. You told me once I'd regret offering to be searched, she said to Yoon-so. I've thought about that all week. She slid the photograph of the logline across the cloth until it stopped at Yoon-so's plate. I regret nothing. You searched the wrong woman. I kept the book. The lawyer came in from the car with the sealed letter, and after that the room stopped belonging to the family and started belonging to procedure. Underwriters withdrawing, board members on their phones, the recording copied, the key photographed and bagged, Sun-hee giving a statement with her grandson's name finally safe in her mouth instead of a stranger's. Yvette watched Jun-suk's gloves get folded into an evidence bag by a hand that wasn't his. She watched Yoon-so's ring come off at a lawyer's murmured suggestion. She did not watch Hae-suk leave. Some endings you let a person keep for themselves. She called her mother from the hallway, where it had all nearly ended the night before. Evelyn answered frightened, and Yvette said the only 3 words that mattered. It's over, Mama. And then, because a promise was a promise, the therapy starts Monday, and I'm bringing the gold paper chocolates myself. Min-jae found her there. He didn't touch the notebook. He'd learned that much. The lawyer says your name is cleared by tomorrow, he said. Publicly. Every person who heard the accusation hears the correction. And my mother? Protected in writing. Her own doctor, her own clinic, our cost, no contact, forever. I'll sign it again in front of your lawyer if you want it signed twice. I'll want it signed twice. He almost smiled. I know. She looked at the man in the gray suit. The tattoo at his collar she no longer needed to describe to herself. The hand that had grabbed her wrist 8 months into a job and set all of this loose. I'm not staying in this house, she said. Not as staff. Not as a kept anything. I'm going to build something with my own name on the door, and my mother's chocolates in the drawer, and a ledger no one can forge because it'll be mine. I'd expect nothing smaller, he said. When you have that door, I'd like to knock on it. Not as the man who owned the house you cleaned, as someone starting even. Yvette held the notebook against her chest. 8 months of evidence turned into the first page of something else. Knock, she said. We'll see who answers. 4 months later, she answered. The office had her name on the glass, a records and compliance firm 2 floors above a bakery in Elmhurst, close enough to the clinic that she could walk her mother to therapy on Mondays and carry the gold paper chocolates in her own coat pocket. Evelyn's left hand had learned to hold a cup again. The clinic had never once asked whether the money was clean. When the knock came, it was on a Tuesday, and she made him wait exactly long enough to prove she could, and then she opened the door herself. No apron, no uniform, no house but her own, and let him in as an equal, on her terms, in her light. She'd kept the book. In the end, the book kept her. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever poured yourself into a household, a job, a family, that treated you as invisible until the moment they needed someone to blame? When they planted the lie in your name, would you have signed your terms in writing like Yvette did, or stayed silent? And have you ever held the one piece of proof that could clear you, knowing no one wanted to hear it? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, truth, and karma, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.